Chapter 626. The people of the Mystic Research Society were certainly unable to hear the conversation between the old lady and the young man in the corner. However, the odd atmosphere was enough for some people to see some clues. There were professional enthusiasts like OK among the high-level cadres of the Mystic Arts Research Society. There were also gossip lords who were extremely interested in private relationships. What's going on between old lady Pan and this Luo guy? Even if a 10th grade kid used his connections, he wouldn't be able to get into the School of Design. Where the hell did you guys do your homework when you were bidding? The designer of North Bank Gear is this bro's mother. Looking at the time, he was probably old lady Pan's disciple back in the day. Oh, I remember now. A few days ago, Xie Junping chattered on endlessly. I got tired of listening to him, so I automatically blocked it. With this gossip lord mentioning it, it was hard for the two platforms to deliberately ignore Luo Nan's existence. The direction of the discussion naturally changed. Luo Nan's name was like a thunderclap piercing the ears of this group of cadres of the Mystic Research Society during this period of time. Sealing off the third underground floor, directly confronting Vice President OK, raising a devil ray. These methods simply made it clear that Luo Nan was a big shot. This was a big shot that had appeared out of nowhere. Random people should get out of the way. But this kid clearly didn't even make it to the last bus to join the society. It seemed like his family background wasn't particularly outstanding. Was this gorgeous turn of events meant to harm the eyes of the people of the Mystic Research Society? Such an abrupt turn of events naturally created enough topics of discussion. If one were to dig deeper, there would be enough gossip waiting to be discovered or created. After pondering a few times, someone really did dig out a bit of information. Speaking of which, I've heard this name before. Hee hee. You guys probably won't be able to guess who brought it up. The suspenseful technique was clumsy enough, but the timing was good. Others would pinch their noses and support him. The suspenseful person didn't let the gossip lord enjoy the limelight amidst a bunch of jeers. He successfully attracted a wave of attention. Only then did he reveal the answer. It's our great president. President? Tang Yi? I just remembered it. That was at the end of September, right? The club's shares hadn't changed yet, so I was in charge of the entrance test for new members. At that time, senior sister Tang was pretty much out of the picture and was only a vice president in name. But that day, she specifically came over to greet me, saying that she would take care of Luo Nan during the interview. In the end, Luo Nan didn't come at all. That's why I have such an impression. Hey, what's their relationship? Keeping him in suspense, he said he's my friend's younger brother. Friend? Man, no, girlfriend? Hee hee. In any case, there was one point that could be emphasized after a round of discussion. This fellow Luo Nan had helped both inside and outside. Though his background was fuzzy, it could be seen from his performance that he was solid even within the Mystic Arts Research Society, where the second generation gathered. Therefore, if he could avoid provoking them, he would. Professor Pan left her seat at this time. She refused to support her, but Luo Nan and Tian Si still wanted to see her off. The three walked past one after another. The two tables also shut their mouths. Those who had stood up with their buttocks in the air just now had to do it again, regardless of whether the old lady agreed or not. The two tables of the Mystic Research Society finally let out a sigh of relief when the three of them left the water. The topic of conversation became even more open. There were even people who began to feel injustice for OK. It's because of old Xie's nagging and some people's messy help that a lot of things weren't done smoothly during the theme week. Later on, it's like an aquarium. OK didn't appreciate these remarks at all. His face turned even greener. 8 Trigram Lord had a good relationship with O Quebec. He sat next to OK, so he patted OK's arm and comforted him. Don't lower yourself to the level of this idiot. I heard that this bro's mother died early. He lacked love since he was young, so he drew a circle to occupy it like a family dog. He probably thinks that place is his mother's embrace and he's secretly crying. These words amused quite a few people. Actually, 8-trigram Lord was a bit afraid of Luonan. But he liked to take advantage of people with his glib tongue. He saw Luonan leave the room, and he laughed and added, "What do you guys think? From that bro's point of view, if someone were to go in and out of those floors, wouldn't it be the same as? Oh my god." A cup of half-hot coffee was directly splashed onto 8-trigram Lord's face. His eyes, nose, and mouth weren't spared. There was also his collar and front lapel. It was truly hot, painful, and embarrassing. At this moment, not to mention the two nearby tables, even the surrounding area was stunned by the sudden change in the situation. The water bar actually went silent for half a second. "Fei Jean, are you F***king sick?" 8-trigram Lord suddenly jumped 3 feet into the air. There was still coffee dripping down from his eyelashes. He had to wipe his hands, but his hands were spread apart. He looked like a duck that had been doused in boiling water. As for Fei Jean, the instigator of all this, she slowly put down her murder weapon. She had an elegant demeanor and responded with a faint smile, "I saved your life. No need to thank me." 8-trigram Lord's mind exploded. King. Old chow, old chow. Go wash up first. Only then did someone come to their senses. They hurriedly stood up to stop the fight. No matter who was right or wrong, they had to first persuade them to leave. This was to avoid making an even bigger joke in public. 8-trigram Lord's brain was basically muddled right now, but he was still subconsciously afraid of Fei Jean. He was pulled away by the people around him, and he subconsciously stepped down from the slope. He walked out of his seat while cursing and waving away the support of others. He also tried his best to block out the strange gazes of the people around him as he walked to the bathroom. But before he could take 2 steps, someone passed by in front of him, blocking his path. He raised his head and saw Luonan's young and inexperienced face. "He's back." 8-trigram Lord and Luonan looked face to face. He shivered in the next second and instinctively averted his gaze. It was also at this moment that cold air clearly grew in his cranial cavity. Even his brain juice was about to freeze. "He wants to kill me." An inexplicable thought popped out and pounded on his heart. Actually, Luonan didn't move at all. He just crossed paths with 8-trigram Lord. 8-trigram Lord's mind was in a mess. He simply didn't notice the multifunctional robot in front of him that was delivering refreshments. He just bumped into it and flipped the tray over. He even had to drink the boiling hot coffee. He screamed miserably and lost his balance. His face fell to the ground, bringing about another wave of chaos. 8-trigram Lord's miserable state was right in front of them, but the 2 tables of the Mystical Research Society weren't able to react in time. The reason was very simple. Luonan's gaze streaked across the 2 tables as he walked back. The cold air seemed to be able to completely freeze the hot drinks on the 2 tables. Of course, the people's reactions and courage were frozen as well. Only when Luonan and Tianci sat back down did someone from the Mystical Research Society get up to check on 8-trigram Lord's situation. They helped him clean up and treat him. The others looked at each other in dismay. A few high-ranking officers finally reacted. They lowered their voices to the lowest level. "That person seems to be, from the circle?" "Huh. He's the government, the military, or a special person from the Starry Sky Club." "I'm C." "Oh, no wonder. Why don't we leave?" "It's too obvious." After all, the Mystic Arts Research Society was considered a professional hobbyist organization. Plus, they were situated in a high-ranking domain with social authority. They had some understanding and contact with some half-true and half-false channels and circles. They soon discovered the mistake in the topic of discussion just now. There was nothing wrong with people with simple backgrounds. There was nothing wrong with people with simple abilities. However, it was very hard to deal with people with both backgrounds and abilities. This was especially true for these freaks who possessed some sort of supersocial attribute. Maybe I should hire a bodyguard in a related field. Hee hee, a lackey who wears an exoskeleton armor every day? In the short term, it won't just be through the channels of the military. The problem is that we don't have any right now, okay? The group of high-ranking officers were undoubtedly in a difficult position. Only Fei Jean had a smile on her face from beginning to end. It was as if she hadn't been the one splashing that person's face just now. Many of her companions had no choice but to admire her information channels and decisiveness from such an enigmatic attitude. Some people tried to get some clues, but Fei Jean didn't refuse. She casually chatted awkwardly with this group of people. Her main focus was still on Luo Nan. She watched as Luo Nan and Tian Si sat back in the corner and conversed in low voices. She was thankful for Gossip Lord's stupidity. When Luo Nan's ice-cold gaze swept past earlier, it was only when he looked at her that his gaze softened. This was a good start. However, the controller behind Fei Jean didn't have any intentions of striking while the iron was hot. She paid close attention to the various details in the corner with interest. She combined it with the harvests from her previous observations and gradually came up with a basic train of thought. Yin Lu. Boss? I remember that Multifaceted sent out an intelligence topic a few days ago. It's closely related to this person. They even invited an expert to conduct a psychological diagnosis. The name should be Persona. Yin Li's memory was trustworthy. Yes, a persona. Mrs. Halder smiled. That's just a half-finished product, and the fee is so expensive. However, it's worth it now. Bring me that intelligence report. If everything goes smoothly, we'll know how to communicate with this person. The first and deputy ablatums of the Blood Flame Order were in a temporary foothold in Xia City. It was very easy for them to search through the information. They soon found the intelligence report that was being paid for. This intelligence report was more or less a summary. It specifically extracted information on Luo Nan's social interactions and carried out a relevant psychological analysis. The problem was that no matter how authoritative an expert in psychology was, it would be hard for them to determine the nature of an ability user, especially a powerful character. After all, every ability user more or less possessed a supersocial attribute. Even in terms of pathology, the structure of the body and soul would undergo structural changes to a greater or lesser degree. On a medical level, it could even be diagnosed as an organic lesion. Of course, this was far from the main point. Luo Nan's situation might be even more complicated. It was said that this person had been undergoing body modifications through injecting nerve drugs starting from the age of 10. Any expert would be flabbergasted when faced with Luo Nan's greatly mutated nervous system structure. They would be speechless. They could only make assumptions based on the external performance of the target. They could only make a general analysis and judgment. The conclusions drawn from Luo Nan's situation were rather rough. They weren't even convincing. Chapter 627. Dissociative Identity Disorder. Multiple Personality Disorder. Ever since it appeared in the world, it had always been the subject of doubt. There were even quite a few experts and scholars who didn't believe that such a case truly existed in the world. Many times, similar diagnoses were unable to convince the masses. Yin Lu was one of those people who weren't convinced. It's still latent? The diagnosis is too vague. Mrs. Halder laughed involuntarily. If you think the conclusion is oily, then you don't need to care about it. Those experts can't do mental and pathological tests. All diagnoses are like scratching an itch through their boots. It's better for us to figure it out ourselves. I'm more interested in the logic behind Multifaceted's name. Her intuition and judgment are sometimes more reliable than those so-called experts. As she spoke, Mrs. Halder opened the intelligence folder. There were statements, analyses, and even more valuable first-hand videos. The folder displayed all of Luo Nan's social interactions in public since his debut. What was especially valuable was the battle scene of Luo Nan making a name for himself in Ocean Sky Cloud City with several people from headquarters. It came from the surrounding monitoring system. There was also a portion of it. It was the footage of a series of clashes before and after the incident at the municipal plaza. This was the information recorded by the Psychic Wave Network. It was of a very high secret level in the Xia City branch, but it had been retrieved by the all-powerful multifaceted Sun Jie. In addition, there were recordings of semi-public and semi-private areas of Acumen College, Aurora Cloud City, and others. Mrs. Halder followed her own train of thought and reclassified the above information. Her methods were very clear. She classified Luo Nan's interactions with his family and friends in the secular world into one category. She classified Luo Nan's interactions with members of the inner world into one category. In addition, she classified Luo Nan's discussions of cultivation theory and lectures into one category. Yin Lu looked at the rearrangement of all kinds of information and thought about what Mrs. Halder had said before. She had a faint understanding. Boss, you want to start with Luo Nan's personality. Subdivide the persona? Mrs. Halder just minded her own business and just nodded slightly. The so-called persona was a relatively traditional concept of psychoanalysis. It roughly referred to a set of systematic patterns produced by the human body in order to adapt to the outside world. It could also be said that it was the outer layer of one's personality that concealed one's true self. Simply speaking, the persona was a person's social nature. Every person had many kinds of masks. Each mask was a facet of their social nature. When put together, they would form a complete personality. This concept originated from Jung's personality analysis psychology theory at the beginning of the last century. This theory was no longer at the forefront of academia, but it could still play a role in related fields. This was especially true for its core, personality holism, which treated the mind as the object of research. It had a miraculous synergy with the mind and soul, which was why it was more suitable for use on ability users. In recent years, the otherworld variant of this theory had maintained a certain level of popularity. Yin Lu was the vice officiant of the Blood Flame Order. Even if she had always been a little neglectful, she still had to study the control of the believer's desires. With Madame Halder's reminder, she immediately had a lot of ideas. But she also understood that these hasty thoughts couldn't withstand serious scrutiny, so she still asked honestly, "What's the matter? Boss, is there any chance for us to cut in?" That depends on whether we can accurately capture his dominant mask. According to this theory, there was no distinction between the real and the fake when everyone had multiple masks. One just needed to look at which mask was used the most often to be considered the dominant mask. It could basically encompass the most basic personality traits. However, there were many times when there was more than one dominant mask. Madame Halder already had a basic judgment. Luo Nan is a relatively simple person. Right now, he has several external masks, and he can more or less form a complete personality. She pulled out the list of information on Luo Nan's interactions with his family and friends. She arranged them in chronological order, forming a fairly clear timeline. There's no need to mention this person's miserable childhood. It has certainly influenced his personality traits. Luo Shuqing and Mo Haihang have become his guardians, and their attitudes and behavior have been extremely positive. They even dote on him a bit as compensation. Their biological children are actually inferior to him in terms of treatment. He is the one being taken care of in his family and in normal social relationships. From the information, we can see that Luo Nan's older cousin, Emoya, is quite powerful. His older cousin, Mo Peng, is quite lively, but he is quite protective of Luo Nan. The stimulation of these two personalities, as well as the difference in treatment, will likely push him to grow in the opposite direction. This is because this will allow him to maximize his profits. This interaction has caused him to be both sensitive and introverted, but he is also obedient and low-key. He has displayed a weak and passive side. Yin Lu concluded in a low voice, "The weaker he is, the more he is favored." Of course, this wasn't the result of Luo Nan taking the initiative to exert his strength. Instead, it was the long-term effects of his unconscious infiltration. Yes. This is Luo Nan's mask of weakness. It is the mode of communication he is most accustomed to using over the years. Then this is one of his dominant masks. Madame Halder didn't directly confirm this. Instead, she interrupted her analysis and observed Luo Nan's corner through Fei Jin's eyes. At this time, Luo Nan was conversing with Tian Si in the corner. Madame Halder and Yin Le didn't use any supernatural methods due to their fear of this master of perception. They just used their professional lip-reading abilities to guess the conversation between the two. The subject of the conversation was still Professor Pan Wen. The old woman's sharp personality and attitude, as well as her intense mood swings, made Luo Nan a bit unsure. His mind was in a mess. Most of the time, it was Tian Si who comforted him. This was probably Luo Nan's behavior under the guidance of the mask of weakness. It could be seen that Tian Si wasn't quite used to it. She most likely never expected that she would use this sort of position to communicate with Luo Nan. She was facing a weak, unconfident, and even sentimental little Shota. This gave her quite a bit of trouble, as she wholeheartedly hoped to hug his thigh. Even Yin Le felt a bit strange, let alone Tian Si. This was completely incompatible with Professor Luo, who was currently at the peak of his power. Fortunately, her train of thought grew clearer. Though I don't approve of the diagnosis of latent did, from the relevant data, the separateness and contradiction of his mask of weakness are quite obvious. In contrast to the mask of weakness, there must be a mask of strength that possesses a dominant strength. Madame Halder simply said, "You analyze it." This. Yin Le hesitated a bit. She simply took Madame Halder's preliminary categorization of the data. She copied Madame Halder and pulled out the records of Luo Nan's official contact with the inner world. She sorted them by time and sorted them out. Looking at the formation mechanism of the mask of weakness, there are two types, imitation and practical application. I feel that aside from the bits and pieces he learned from his family and friends, the greatest source of his paradigm and practical environment can only come from the inner world. Yin Le paused for a bit and stole a glance at her boss's expression. Only then did she continue to make inferences. From the relevant intelligence, Luo Nan was suddenly pushed into a high-danger level event. There was practically no buffer at all, and the intensity was extremely shocking. Luo Nan witnessed many casualties and unforeseen events with the human-faced arachnid. Then, it was said that he directly participated in the underground fighting arena incident. He followed it from start to finish, and it involved high-intensity confrontations. The Frost River reality incident on Fudong Avenue involved high-intensity confrontations, large-scale killings, and he was heavily injured. Then, there was Ocean Sky Cloud City. He directly killed people, and he killed 4 people at once. Then, there was the series of conflicts in the municipal plaza. Extraordinary level attacks and defenses. The 2000s of a young lady incident. Let's not even talk about it. From this series of events, we can see the ecology of the inner world in Luo Nan's eyes. Of course, he personally experienced it. It was a continuous, intense, and high-intensity conflict. There was no lack of paradigms and environments. Luo Nan himself had the corresponding talent and ability. He quickly formed a direct, unyielding, and cruel mask of strength. It was reasonable. Mrs. Halder's expression didn't change. She asked without thinking, and then? And then the mask of weakness that has always occupied a dominant position for over a decade was far too different from the mask of strength that had just been formed. It led to separation and conflict. Halfway through her words, Yin Le's gaze swept across the information that had basically been categorized. However, there were clearly 3 groups of information. She suddenly became speechless. Halder didn't reprimand nor did he give any pointers. He continued to do the finishing work of categorizing the information. Instead, there were some changes in the corner where Luo Nan was located several dozen kilometers away. Tian Si's face revealed an astonished expression. She hesitated for a moment before getting up and sitting next to Luo Nan. The two of them leaned against each other, looking quite intimate. Some people subconsciously curled their lips at the 2 tables of the Mystic Arts Research Society, but no one dared to open their mouths to say anything. Let's turn back time to half a minute ago. Tian Si had been struggling with Luo Nan's weak and wavering emotions ever since she returned to her seat. No matter how hard she tried, she found it hard to find the cold and callous element of subsonic life taking control of the demon from this youth. However, there was a very subtle sensation. A corner of her heart churned as she looked at Luo Nan like this. Just when she thought that the time they spent together tonight was about to be exhausted by this bizarre scene, Luo Nan's wristband vibrated. Ding dong. A message entered Luo Nan's private mailbox. It was a notification. Luo Nan was stunned. His main communication tools were the hex-ear and his wristband. He mainly used instant messaging and messages. He would occasionally use the cloud space. This mailbox was only used for identity registration. It was practically in a half-abandoned state. Why would someone send him a message? He lowered his head, and the wristband's intelligence captured the corresponding stimulus. A virtual interface popped up, highlighting the title and sender of the message. The title of the message was the default, no topic. But under the rules of social authority, all formal communication on the internet required real name authentication. So Luo Nan saw a name that he could intuitively perceive. Chapter 628. This is Professor Pan's email number? Luo Nan was greatly surprised. Tian-Si tilted her head to size it up. She confirmed, that's right. This is Professor Pan's private email. She set up her own server. I still remember the domain name. The content of the email was just a link. Luo Nan clicked on it without hesitation. The link led to a cloud space. Encryption measures were set up here. It was a privilege encryption. Only visitors allowed by the owner of the cloud space could enter with their ID. Luo Nan didn't pay much attention to the encryption method. He cut into the interface, and his gaze fell on the highest folder in the cloud space. His gaze was a bit blank. The only folder that could be displayed was named, Applied Research on the Coupled Design of Modern Architecture, Draft. Luo Nan clicked on the folder 2 seconds later, and a message appeared. The target folder was approximately 4 petabytes in size. There were several folders and files inside. This storage number wasn't large, but it wasn't small either. Some people wouldn't be able to store a lifetime's worth of experience inside, but in some fields, it didn't seem to be much. Luo Nan's fingers trembled slightly, and he clicked on it. A traditional window interface was laid out. The densely packed folders gave people a headache at first glance. But from another perspective, every folder was named according to an obvious rule. Letters, numbers, and words were clearly layered. One could vaguely feel the structure and flow of a certain system if one looked at it carefully. Luo Nan scrolled through the interface and scrolled down to the bottom. The interface naturally captured the only document file on the interface. The name was exactly the same as the folder on the upper layer. Applied Research on the Coupled Design of Modern Architecture, Draft. Luo Nan's face twitched. He clicked on it again, and sure enough, it was a thesis. Since it was a draft, the format was relatively casual. His gaze skimmed over it, and it fell on the author's signature below the title. It was impossible for him to overlook it, and it was impossible for him to forget it. Bo Qingwen. Luo Nan's gaze froze. He subconsciously scrolled through the interface during this time, but the words, tables, and diagrams inside seemed to have lost all meaning. Or perhaps his brain had lost the ability to accept and understand. It wasn't until he flipped to the end of the thesis that he saw the scattered sentences that were clearly unfinished, as well as the deliberately left blank space. Only then did he vaguely grasp a bit of context. Senior, come over here. Luo Nan didn't even know how he opened his mouth to speak. Tian-Si hesitated for a moment. She was most likely frightened by Luo Nan's expression and tone, but she still got up and sat beside him. His gaze, which he had intentionally shifted to avoid arousing suspicion, was now naturally directed towards the virtual interface. At this time, Luo Nan had already brought the interface back to the first page of the article, revealing the title and author. When Tian-Si saw these, she also jumped in fright and almost cried out. Yes, senior sister, my mind is in a mess now and I can't remember clearly. You've checked the relevant information. Is this one among my mother's published papers? Tian-Si immediately replied, no, definitely not. Really? Luo Nan grinned. This gift from Professor Pan is really. His fingers unconsciously slid across the screen, and the interface also scrolled up and down. Beside him, Tian-Si said, Junior, look at this table of contents. It doesn't look like a thesis, but more like a book, an academic monograph. Luo Nan was a bit startled. He followed the direction of Tian-Si's finger and looked. Then he immediately switched to the folder interface. But there were at least 100 folders of the same level. It was impossible to count them all at once. He decided to open up the system and look at the attributes. With just one glance, he had an idea. As expected, there are more than 4,000 folders of different levels and more than 100,000 documents. If they are all reference materials for the thesis, it would be too exaggerated. But if it's a book, then it seems like it has just begun. He looked at the last edited date. It was actually May 2080, a little over a month before he was born. Luo Nan estimated that his mother should be in the wilderness at that time. No, it was also possible that Professor Pan had started writing. Luo Nan's mind was in a mess. Right now, it really wasn't suitable for him to do more complex analysis. He could only forcefully turn his gaze away. And at this time, he saw new information on the side of the system interface. It was the list of visitors who had access to the cloud space. Of course Luo Nan was on the list, and there were only 3 people who had access to the cloud space. One of them was Professor Pan Wen. Right now, he was displayed as logged in. As for the other 2 gray names, Bo Qingwen, Luo Zhongheng. The interface suddenly closed. This was done by Luo Nan. This was because he might not be able to control his emotions in another half a second. In fact, at this moment, the tea on the table was already rippling. Let's go. Luo Nan didn't dare to sit any longer. He got up in a bit of a hurry, raised his head, and took a deep breath. Beside him, Tian-Si got up to make way. She asked, let's go. Luo Nan didn't say anything. He walked straight out, and Tian-Si hurried to keep up. The 2 left the water bar with quick steps, causing the group of people from the Mystic Arts Research Society to let out sighs of relief. Previously, whether they should stay or leave had already made them very conflicted. Fortunately, after passionate love and intimate contact, they left first. Someone mumbled, he's definitely going to vent, shut up. Shouts rang out in unison, forcefully suppressing this idiot who didn't know the difference between life and death. Fei Jin watched with a smile. She didn't react. But 2 minutes later, she found a random reason and took her leave, separating from this group of people. She didn't care about the discussions of the people behind her. She didn't plan on wasting time in Ocean Sky Cloud City, so she went straight back. With Luo Nan's situation, it was impossible for him to stay too long in this crowded area. Otherwise, the security personnel by his side would probably go crazy. Right now, there were 2 possibilities. One was to go home. The other was to return to gear on the North Bank. With Fei Jin's status, she could only choose the latter. She took the elevator to the 3rd floor underground and prepared to take the short tram back to school. But just as she squeezed out of the elevator with the stream of people, her mind suddenly stirred. She raised her head and saw Luo Nan's figure standing in the corner up ahead. He seemed to be talking to someone. Tian-Si stood to the side, quite a distance away. She even turned her face away a bit unnaturally. Clearly, she hadn't blended in with the conversation. Her role was quite awkward. As for the person talking to Luo Nan, he was leaning against the wall. From Fei Jin's angle, only half of his brightly colored sportswear could be seen. He looked very young. The 2 controllers behind Fei Jin did not expect this to happen. This was indeed a chance encounter. But if it wasn't handled well, it would be no different from being followed in the eyes of Luo Nan, a master of perception. Luckily, Fei Jin's main controller was rich in experience. She didn't change the frequency of her steps. She continued to walk forward, and she even called out a greeting when she got closer. As expected, Luo Nan turned his head to glance at her. His face was expressionless, but Tian-si next to him turned her head. She was a bit surprised. Tian-si's actions made the person on the other side of the corner lean over in curiosity. He whistled and said, "Another beauty. Your talent in this area isn't bad." His lively and frivolous reaction was indeed that of a young man. But at this moment, the two first oblatums, who were several dozen kilometers away, were the ones who were shocked. Tian Bang. Yin-lu cried out involuntarily. She was shocked, but there was also loathing and hatred. That's right. The person in the corner was Tian Bang, who had made a name for himself some time ago. This burner, known as the number one person beneath extraordinaries, was dressed in overly gaudy casual sports attire. He was like a Chinibyu youth who couldn't keep up with the trends. But it was this person who had stepped on Mo Luen and the Blood Flame Order and leaped up to stand at the center of the world stage. He was the mortal enemy of the Blood Flame Order. This was without a doubt. Such a mortal enemy had suddenly appeared before their eyes. Moreover, he was conversing intimately with another important target. What in the world was going on? The two controllers could not help but have similar thoughts in their minds. And at the scene, Fei Jin's footsteps stopped for a moment. Her gaze swept past Tian Bang's face. Her eyes were mixed with a series of micro-expressions of curiosity, astonishment, and realization. In the end, her focus returned to Luo Nan. Junior's friend. I won't disturb you any longer. You guys chat. Fei Jin smiled as she spoke. She gave a slight bow and walked a few steps to the side. She turned her head in a very natural manner and sized up Tian Bang with a few glances. Then she turned her head and left. As the first mate, Yin-lu admired Mrs. Halder's control of her emotions and details to the point of prostrating herself. Fei Jin, who had been under Mrs. Halder's control just now, had perfectly displayed the subtlety of a member of the outer circle encountering a heavyweight character like Tian Bang. She had successfully recognized and secretly restrained herself. Forceful words were all about the details, but the most wonderful thing was still the word natural. The automatic conveyor belt brought Fei Jin far away. Yin-lu was still reflecting on the subtlety of their encounter when Mrs. Halder spoke. Did you feel it? Tian Bang's current position had already exceeded the range of Fei Jin's natural perception. Yin-lu would not make a low-level mistake and forcefully use an ability user's ability to detect him. So for a time, she really couldn't understand. She frowned and said, Tian Bang appeared here. I'm not talking about Tian Bang. What does the matter we're currently handling have to do with Tian Bang? Luo Nan? Yin-lu struggled to free her attention from Tian Bang with great difficulty. She seriously recalled Luo Nan's previous performance. It seems that his relationship with Tian Bang is quite cold. Do you have a more precise description? Mrs. Halder's tone seemed to be a bit dissatisfied. Yin-lu just felt a mountain of pressure. She racked her brains to ponder, practically replaying the series of observations she had of Luo Nan before and after they left the elevator. She thought over and over before speaking. He's absent-minded. He's a bit impatient. His eyelids drooped. He has no interest in Tian Bang's words. At the same time, the tips of his feet turned outward, and his body leaned to the side. He's been wanting to leave. Why did such a situation occur? Oh, it's very likely that he received important information that needed to be processed. His and Tian-si's expressions and actions were quite obvious when we were at the water bar. Mrs. Halder continued to ask questions, not giving Yin-lu a chance to catch her breath. This is the main reason why Luo Nan is impatient. But when faced with a person like Tian Bang, even if he doesn't have a deep hatred like we do, and even if he isn't a close friend, he is still a stakeholder. Don't tell me that he doesn't have the slightest desire to socialize. Yin-lu muttered to herself, he's always been introverted. He's not good at socializing. What's the reason for this situation? Do you remember our conclusion from before? Luo Nan has a mask of weakness, and a mask of strength. If the mask of weakness was in effect, then he should have displayed a courteous, respectful, or shy appearance just now in order to obtain Tian Bang's favorable impression. If the mask of strength was in effect, then sparks would have long since exploded between the two. And no matter what kind of mask it is, it wouldn't have this sort of effect. Enla responded instinctively, he has a third mask. Chapter 629. Fei Jin had already boarded the streetcar heading to Acumen College. Luo Nan had been delayed by Tian Bang, so he had most likely missed this train. The two controllers didn't feel that this was a pity. This sort of chance encounter was not worth it, especially since Luo Nan was at the most critical moment of his mental analysis. The Blood Flame Order's base in Xia City quieted down as well. Mrs. Halder had roughly finished categorizing the intelligence data and was put together for the final time. She pulled out the third set of data that had never been put to use before. It was the list of Luo Nan's discussions of cultivation theory and lectures. She paused for a moment and searched through the other two groups, especially the group with the mask of strength. She put the data in one by one. Enla calmed down and carefully observed. She discovered that the new data that Mrs. Halder had put in belonged to Luo Nan's performance when he dealt with Grey personnel. The so-called Grey personnel were neither friend nor foe. They were people who lacked friendship and good feelings. They were people who couldn't be considered mortal enemies. It wasn't just Tian Bang. The gossip's lord, who had just spouted trouble, and OK, who had a conflict a few days ago over the location of the elusive secret device, were all in this group. If one were to go even further back, there were also a few ignorant second generations who dared to stroke a tiger's whiskers in the Ocean Sky Cloud City and Aurora Cloud City incident. There were also a few people from the management company in the Municipal Plaza incident. There were also a few people from the outer circle, represented by He Donglu, who were neither friendly nor aloof. Right now, Enla didn't need Mrs. Halder's guidance. Her mind was like a movie. She sorted through the data, and a certain impression formed. She opened her mouth, wanting to speak, but she forcefully restrained herself. If you want to say it, then say it. Mrs. Halder's keen insight was displayed in full force at this moment. Enlu adjusted her breathing and said softly, I believe that Luo Nan is very distant from these people. Yes, distant. Aside from the few moments when he was stimulated to explode, where he had clear hostility and even killing intent, he basically ignored them. He was stiff, his thoughts jumped, and his mind was absent-minded. His mind wasn't on face-to-face communication at all. He was on a completely different frequency than these people. So? Mrs. Halder asked softly. Enla was about to come to a conclusion, but she hesitated before she said, there's no strict classification of personas. It doesn't matter if it's the third persona. Perhaps we can call it a mask of alienation for convenience. But we have to find the behind-the-scenes mechanism of its formation and operation to make sense. Mrs. Halder did not even raise her head. In other words, you only saw his attitude, but not his logic. Enla said, Boss, I believe that a person's thoughts and emotions are always continuous. From an outsider's point of view, it looked like it was jumping and torn, but from the person's point of view, it might be consistent and complete. It's just that we can't peek into people's hearts, we can only guess. Mrs. Halder interrupted her. Do you have any ideas? Enla took another breath and took the initiative to flip through the materials. She spent a few minutes and found two rather special examples in the third type of materials. During the Ocean Sky Cloud City incident, Luo Nan, Black Beetle, Puppeteer, Snake Tongue, and the others had a relatively long exchange during the deadlock stage. The contents were all related to formatting theory, such as order frames, gear coupling, and so on. Even further back, during the Fudong Avenue Frost River reality incident, he and Fairchild, who had yet to be identified as friend or foe, engaged in a cultivation discussion that was completely incompatible with the atmosphere. And when I looked through the communication records of the time, Luo Nan had an argument with the support personnel of the Xia City branch. The logic was disjointed, making communication difficult. Of course, there were elements of formatting theory interspersed within. That's right. Enla clenched her fists as she let out a low cry. She was a bit annoyed, but she was even more excited. Actually, Mrs. Halder had long ago categorized all of this information. It was the same as giving her the most clear guidance. When the frequency was in sync, her train of thought naturally connected and flowed smoothly. I overlooked one point before. Formatting theory. This was the foundation of Luo Nan's existence. It was the foundation that separated him from external social relations. It was the foundation that was truly internalized. And the process of internalizing formatting theory should be the core element that influenced the composition of his personality. Then, I must start from the interaction between him and formatting theory. Yes, it can't be pure theory. There is also the enormous social and interpersonal pressure associated with it. Mrs. Halder's expression did not change. Her fingertips moved forward through a series of documents, finally stopping at a certain node. Luo Nan's formal contact with formatting theory should have been over 5 years ago. He was 10 years old at the time. A 10-year-old child with no foundation, no investment, no support, yet he resisted the enormous pressure to learn and inherit his grandfather's theory and grudges. There should be a sufficiently powerful motivation, right? Enla didn't hesitate to respond. His family changed greatly when he was young. His grandfather, father, mother, and practically all of his immediate family members were caught in the maelstrom of formatting theory. They were even annihilated. This stimulation was enough. You just mentioned the interaction. Formatting theory has the value of allowing him to continue researching it in depth. Also, there is the effect of empathy. Through research, he can converse with his relatives and elders. This is an extremely important psychological compensation. Of course, it is also a driving force. Mrs. Halder raised an eyebrow. So we need to consider what he has experienced in this series of processes. We need to consider what he has obtained. I remember that before Luo Nan made his debut, his results were a series of neurological drugs. How did he obtain them? Enla closed her eyes slightly. She put herself in Luo Nan's shoes and thought for a moment. She answered her own question. I heard that Luo Nan didn't have the conditions to test drugs. He could only use himself as a test subject. Of course, this process was filled with endless failures. It was extremely dangerous. He even struggled on the line between life and death. There was certainly anxiety, panic, self-doubt, and so on during this process. There were enormous sources of negative emotions. Mrs. Halder's voice entered her ears. But he has walked all the way to where he is now. He has obtained absolute accomplishments. So he has also obtained powerful self-confidence. No, that's wrong. Lee's eyes were still closed. She denied her initial inference. This was because there weren't many circumstances that matched Luo Nan's performance in reality. He wasn't a proud and self-confident person. It is said that the basis of his series of research and experiments all came from his grandfather's notes. In that case, he doesn't trust himself. He trusts his grandfather's theory, formatting theory. Enla suddenly opened her eyes. That's right. From Luo Nan's perspective, researching formatting theory is tantamount to having an endless conversation with formatting theory. He is endlessly receiving the guidance of his grandfather. He is endlessly overcoming challenges, obtaining sufficient positive feedback from them, and he continues to strengthen his confidence and dedication towards this theory. At the same time, the process of loneliness has given him no reference to compare himself to. It has strengthened his mentality by a factor of 2. So this has turned him into a person who has internalized the ideals of formatting theory. He has used the ruler of ideals to measure things internally and externally, to others and to himself. So, this isn't a mask of alienation. It's a mask of ideals. He is a young man who uses theoretical research every day to converse with his grandfather and his parents. Laughing and cursing in anger, warm and cold, and other socializing traits are really useless. It would be better to use formatting theory to evaluate and test him. If there's meaning, then he'll research. If there's no meaning, then he'll ignore it. This is the standard by which he conducts his judgment. This is his true dominant mask. Chapter 630. She roughly understood the classification of Luo Nan's persona masks. There were far too many examples that she could refer to. The persona mask was essentially an archetype theory. Once the archetype was extracted, she could always find similar cases that corresponded with it. People like Luo Nan have existed since ancient times. Yin Lu wanted to make a further analysis. What followed next seemed to be much easier. After all, even if she ignored all sorts of medical cases, a few famous people could still reflect each other. This was especially true in the East Asian cultural area with its long history of civilization. There were far too many famous people throughout history who wore a persona mask. Yin Li's thoughts spun and she thought of a fellow who was quite similar to Luo Nan. This person was a famous historian and politician. He belonged to the conservative faction. His mind was filled with patriarchal principles. He shut himself in a basement to write books for 15 years. The relevant concepts were completely internalized. Later on, when he was in power and governed the country, he would only listen to his ideas. He became a typical representative of people who talked reason behind closed doors. Don't casually bring out examples. Don't do stupid things like using words to destroy the meaning. Mrs. Halder saw through Yin Li's thoughts. She didn't let her thoughts wander too far. Luo Nan himself possesses an extremely special nature. No famous historical figure would have a semi-philosophical system like formatting theory, where the mighty power belongs to the self. Moreover, it can be practiced, applied, and modified at any time. Modified? Yin Lu was a bit stunned. Wasn't Luo Nan's persona mask an extreme paranoia towards formatting theory? In this way, he should be like that extremely conservative historian. He couldn't change the laws of his ancestors in the slightest. Oh, hold on. There seems to be a problem with the direction. Mrs. Halder didn't test Yin Lu any further. She straightforwardly expressed her opinion. Perhaps Luo Nan himself doesn't believe that formatting theory is completely correct. This can be seen from his attitude during the lecture on the 14th. Back then, his speech was quite cautious. He always used self-mockery and jokes to dispel the extreme authority of formatting theory. Let's not talk about the more complicated background for now. From the analysis of these circumstances and the information we know, he is very stubborn towards formatting theory. However, he doesn't have a particularly paranoid view towards whether formatting theory is correct or not. In the end, his stubbornness towards formatting theory is just a kind of empathy. The ideals of formatting theory are just a mask he uses to treat his imaginary close relatives. This is because he only has this mask to choose from when facing his grandfather and parents in the void. To put it more bluntly, he is only courting. The word courting was a rather sensitive word. There were two ways to interpret it in the dictionary, and what the two first oblatums were communicating was obviously the more ancient kind, which was simply seeking affection. Is it a need for emotions and belonging? Yin Lu took the initiative to analyze using Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Madame Halder agreed. You can say it that way. There is a high probability that Luo Nan himself is on the third level. He urgently needs the comfort of the relevant emotions. This is a pretty good starting point. But soon, she changed the topic, but at the same time, you have to understand the influence of empathy. After a long period of empathy, to a certain extent, he was the projection of his grandfather and parents' needs. He wanted to fulfill the wishes of his closest kin, which made his needs much greater than that of a normal person. In such a situation, he would most likely have the problem of being closely involved in the situation and might not understand what he really needed. If we start from the emotional aspect, it might seem like a straight line, but it might actually be the most difficult path. This was equivalent to denying Yin Li's thoughts. Yin Li's eyebrows knitted together. She felt that it was a bit of a pity, after all, it's a core element. Mrs. Halder's lips hooked slightly. We aren't psychologists. We have no reason to treat him. Am I right? Okay, this reason was quite strong. Lu was dumbfounded. Of course, Lu understood Mrs. Halder's true meaning. If Luo Nan's core driving force was said to be courting, then the various personality masks were the outer muscles and bones. Using courting as the foundation to expand his mental power would form a permeating influence on all the personality masks. But this influence was distorted by his primal instincts and other factors, forming a bewildering barrier that Luo Nan himself might not be clear about. So he still relied on the personality mask, both consciously and unconsciously, when it came to dealing with people and matters. In front of this defensive maze, the scalpel that was suitable for surgery might not be suitable for psychological attacks. Lu wasn't dejected. Instead, she felt that her thoughts were becoming clearer and clearer. Of course, her boss was far better than her boss. With her boss protecting her, she tried to continue deducing in a different direction. Then we can only start from the mask. Go from shallow to deep. Which mask? Of course it's the concept mask. There's no harm in being more specific. Yes, boss. Lu wasn't stingy with her words. She narrated her train of thought, allowing her boss to examine, refer, and verify. I'm using the method of elimination. Even if I can't be considered the dominant position of the concept mask, the other two masks need not be mentioned. The strong mask is too straightforward and simple. There's no way to beat around the bush. No matter who wins or loses, one side is bound to be smashed to pieces. It's not suitable. As for the weak mask, we can only start from emotions. The reason we can't do this is because there are too many uncontrollable factors, boss. Plus, under the influence of the core driving force of courting, we can deduce that this mask is actually an important source of replenishment for the psychological needs of courting. It looks weak, but it's actually extremely selfish and sensitive. I'm afraid that the concept mask on the other side will also be staring at us while we stare at this mask. If we aren't careful, we'll make a mistake and cause trouble. Mrs. Halder nodded slightly. Then we can only use the concept mask. Yes. Is there a better reason? Stability. The greatest advantage of the concept mask is stability. Mrs. Halder gave a smile that wasn't a smile. Are you sure? I'm sure. Lee's thoughts reached this point, and she already grasped the pearl of wisdom. During the formation process of the concept mask, Luo Nan was in an extreme environment. He lacked a sense of security, and he lacked true communication. Therefore, there's a high probability that he's a latent perfectionist with obsessive-compulsive symptoms. Sometimes, he'll be extremely anxious, impatient, and weak. This matches with my previous analysis. But due to the special characteristics of the concept mask, the pressure of the symbiotic emotional and psychological elements will shift to other masks. This will become a high-probability event. For example, anxiety, panic, and weakness will be thrown to the weak mask. Ego, pride, and so on will be thrown to the strong mask. The elements left behind in the concept mask are relatively perfect. The more perfect it is, the more likely it will become the basis and yardstick for judgment. In this way, of the three main masks, the concept mask will inevitably be the core. The weak mask and the strong mask will wait for an opportunity to appear. From Luo Nan's daily behavior, he would be fine in a relatively simple situation. He would use the weak mask in front of friends and family to obtain sympathy and love. He would use the strong mask to erupt in front of a great enemy from the inner world, killing his way through. At this time, the two masks are relatively stable. His behavior and train of thought are easy to estimate. But the problem is that these are two completely different concepts and methods. I can't find a point of compromise between them. It would be fine if the logic of behavior was completely different from that of the inner world and that of the secular world. But there are quite a few overlaps. This creates a barrier. It creates a separation and a tear in behavior. Once the situation becomes complicated, for example in the water bar, where Big Mouth Chow of the Divine Research Society was disrespectful to his mother, the weak mask and the strong mask instantly switch. Luo Nan wanted to kill Big Mouth Chow, but his target was just an ordinary person with enmity. And because of Fei Jin's interference, the situation didn't reach its worst state. In this way, the strong mask wasn't completely suitable, and the weak mask didn't have the space to make an appearance. A tear was created, and the concept mask naturally filled in this gap. Luo Nan made a judgment based on the concept mask. Big Mouth Chow wasn't worth analyzing and pondering. There was no need to waste energy on him and create more trouble. So he restrained his emotions, and Big Mouth Chow was able to preserve his life. In those few seconds, whether it was the weak mask or the strong mask, all of them revealed their unstable characteristics. Only the concept mask became the basis for Luo Nan's behavior. Yin Li's analysis took a long time, but the result was extremely clear. Though this is just an independent incident, I believe that a careful analysis of all of Luo Nan's related incidents will lead to this conclusion. Any long-term contact with his weak mask or strong mask, under the influence of many factors, will ultimately face the judgment of the concept mask. Rather than this, it would be better to make preparations to communicate with the concept mask from the very beginning. This way, the uncertainties will be reduced to the minimum. Mrs. Halder listened quietly. She no longer tidied up the materials. In the end, she even narrowed her eyes. Her face was like an ancient well without ripples, concealing all of her emotions. Yin Li had been brimming with confidence when she made a long speech, but she felt an inexplicable lack of confidence when she saw this situation. "Boss, did I say something wrong?" "No, you didn't. Unless we are able to squeeze into Luo Nan's circle of friends and family in the first instance, this is the only path we can take." Mrs. Halder opened her eyes, but her gaze was cast toward the neon-changing night sky outside the window. "I was just thinking that headquarters of the Ability User Society, as well as a few other people, were in a rush to appear. They didn't complete their task, but they did leave us plenty of references. We can be considered lucky, but will we succeed in one fell swoop? Or will we become one of the many examples for others to analyze and ridicule?" "Boss." Yin Lu was shocked and at a loss. She didn't know why Mrs. Halder had suddenly sighed with emotion. Those who predict others also predict others. Those who know others don't necessarily know themselves. Only with this kind of self-awareness can we face the future with a good attitude. Mrs. Halder chuckled. Her gaze turned to Yin Li's youthful, tender, and beautiful face. "Let's do things according to your train of thought. Come up with a plan tonight and let me see it tomorrow morning." "Oh right. Take Fei Jin home first. Don't let anything go wrong." With that, she stood up and walked out of the room. "Boss? You're going out to relax." Chapter 631. It was already 2:00 in the morning. The main restaurant of the Starry Sky Club was temporarily quiet. As the manager, Sun Jiayi didn't hesitate to use her privilege to give herself a day off. She took her new prey back to Xia City for fun. Walking in the empty underground garage, they talked and laughed. It was inevitable that they would have some physical contact. Sun Jiayi didn't know which detail aroused her desire. She suddenly pressed the young female model against the hood of the car. Her hands moved up and down as the model groaned in pain. The female model was startled and struggled instinctively. "Godmother, this is the surveillance area." Sun Jiayi didn't even raise her head. Only her laughter came from the place where they touched. "Enjoy yourself in time. Be timely." The female model didn't struggle and half of her clothes were taken off. She didn't know what to do. Suddenly, the one on top of her stopped moving. Their bodies were squeezed together and slightly trembled with their breaths. "Godmother?" the female model asked in a daze. "That's why I said this kind of problem will happen if I'm not timely." Sun Jiayi sighed and straightened up. She inserted her fingers into her short but thick hair and combed it a little. Then, Her smile was bright and brilliant. Even though she was old enough to be the mother of the female model, her carefree and casual attitude was far beyond the pretentious handsome men and beautiful women in the circle. She patted the female model's cheek. Plans can't keep up with changes. Something is coming. Go back to the club and have a rest. I'll come to you after I deal with things. The female model was pulled up. She was confused and let Sun Jai tidy up her clothes. Sun Jai's actions were gentle and affectionate. She was a little moved. Godmother, I'll accompany you, Sun Jai just smiled. At this time, the butterfly door of the sports car opened. She gave the female model another gentle kiss and then sat in the car, isolated from the outside world. The sports car roared. It drove out of the parking space and sped up in the underground garage. In the car, Sun Jai looks at the rearview mirror. Of course, she is not looking at her goddaughter, who is still confused behind the car. She wants to confirm whether the person who made her get into the car, licked the back of her neck with invisible flames, and threatened her life is the person she guesses. There was a figure in the rearview mirror. But just by looking at his face, it was an unfamiliar face that he had never seen before. It was a young married woman. She was somewhat good-looking and her makeup was exquisite, but it was hard to recognize her. Even though Sun Jai had undergone strict memory training, she still hesitated for a moment before confirming that she had indeed never met this person before. However, the flickering flames in his eyes gave Sun Jai more confidence. Directly oppressing the medulla oblongata, disrupting the blood vessel's activity, but it seems to exist but not exist, and enter but not enter. Such exquisite control of flames. Madam? In the back seat, the young woman's lips curled up. It wasn't a particularly stunning face, but because of this micro-expression, it brought about an extraordinary aura. Sun Jai confirmed it and sighed, Madam, where do you want to go? The young woman casually said, anywhere. I'm bored and want to talk to someone. All right. Sun Jai's index finger tapped on the steering wheel twice, and the car's AI kicked in, entering autopilot mode. This sort of basic function was fine, but why didn't it do its job when she wanted it to guard against theft? Sun Jai sighed again, but she didn't turn her head. She propped one hand on the steering wheel and continued combing her hair with the other. Her body language carried a bit of helplessness. Madam, we actually don't need to meet in this manner. Even if we want to be safe, we can just use a ready-made tool like Fei Jin. Right now in Xia City, there are less and less soul envoys of your order. It's too much of a pity to use them and then scrap them. It's nothing. Compared to an insignificant soul envoy, it would be a real pity if your identity as multifaceted were to crumble. Oh. Sun Jai, otherwise known as multifaceted, stopped what she was doing. Through the rearview mirror and the soul envoy, she locked gazes with Madame Halder, who was hundreds of kilometers away. Madam, are you still brooding over what happened at the seaside villa? Believe me, the Order of Souls. Don't worry about the Order of Souls. I came here today to express my gratitude. That persona intelligence gave us a very important inspiration. It also allowed us to clearly define the entry point for our work in the near future. It was excellent. Sun Jai raised an eyebrow. You call this gratitude? Oh, I'm sorry. This is probably an overreaction from eating shitty chocolate. The scorching sensation at the back of her neck showed no signs of disappearing. It even increased. It was like the endless accumulation of negative emotions beneath Sun Jai's smile. Therefore, Sun Jai was like a gold medal after-sales service. No matter how great the customer's resentment was, she would always maintain her smile. Madam, based on our good business reputation, I feel that we can use a more appropriate method to deal with this problem. If the intelligence is flawed, we can discuss it further. If it doesn't work out, we can always go through the process of a refund. I said it before. The intelligence is excellent. But the more it is so, the more vexed I become towards your disgraceful behavior of marrying a woman to more than one marriage and the intentions behind it. This was true fire. Sun Jai could even smell the strange smell of charred hair at the back of her head. There might even be the fragrance of meat mixed within. Sun Jie didn't blink. Her smile didn't change. Think about my nickname, Madam. Forgive me for being rude, but I'm not a full-time intelligence agent for your order. Madam Halder also sent a smile through the Soul Envoy. However, the multifaceted, I know, is a top-notch broker and intelligence expert who can cooperate with many large and medium-sized organizations, including the Blood Flame Order. He should have the corresponding professional qualities. But look at what you've done. You set up the Persona Intelligence Report as a group message and gave it to almost everyone in your intelligence circle. Sun Jie had no choice but to interrupt. Madam, it's my freedom to choose how I sell it. Furthermore, I've already stated this before I sold it. I admit that Persona is expensive, and the content inside is also half-baked. But right now, Mr. Luo is the focus of the entire world. His intelligence is worth this price, even if it's just a summary article. A small premium is a very standard market practice. I believe that for all parties with interests, including the Blood Flame Order, this isn't much. Chapter 632. Sun Jie finally blinked. Hint. Inside the carriage, Madame Halder's will transformed into a low vibration in the young woman's throat. You said to everyone, start from the angle of the mask, and that was the basic method to uncover the true value of the information. It was exactly according to your train of thought that Yin Lo and I took less than an hour to complete the clues and perfect the logic. The two of us can solve the problem. With your ability, can't you do it with a few psychologists? Once it's complete, the value of the information will definitely soar, and the profits will be 10 times more than what it is now. Why didn't you do such a good thing? Sun Jie pressed her forehead and smiled helplessly. Madam, hearing you say that makes my heart ache. I'm afraid I've lost a lot of money in this business. Hiss. Speak properly. No matter how healthy your cardiovascular function is, if your medulla oblongata is burned through, it will be meaningless. Under the powerful pressure of the Yin flames, Sun Jie's breathing became chaotic. Her heart beat wildly, and her brain lacked oxygen. She became dizzy and numb. Even so, she forced herself to maintain a smile and looked directly at the flickering flames in the rearview mirror. Madam, you think too highly of me. The burning sensation and pressure at the back of her neck eased. Sun Jie seized the opportunity to spit out all the words she had been suppressing in her chest. You and Deputy Officiant Yin are both top-notch figures in the inner world. How can you force others to do what you can? Besides, I only named you because I saw Mr. Luo's age and dull personality. It doesn't match your great reputation, so I thought of it. This time, it was Sun Jie's turn to be interrupted. The young woman's original voice rang out, conveying Madame Halder's will. It had nothing to do with Sun Jie's defense. Of course I think highly of you. Our cooperation has been on and off for 15 years. Perhaps at that time, you were only at the age of your goddaughter. I have many goddaughters. Madam, which one are you talking about? Sun Jie's forehead and back were already drenched in cold sweat. This was a natural reaction of her body, and she couldn't control it. Only the smile on her face was nearly perfect. Knowing that Sun Jie was still spouting nonsense, Madame Halder no longer made meaningless threats. The woman in the front row had already used facts to prove that ordinary interrogation techniques had no significant effect on her. Madame Hard said, from what I know, the name multifaceted has quite a bit of status in the intelligence circles of Xia City, but there aren't many people who know of your true identity. Do you remember how I found out about your identity? It's because of an investment. Oh. Sun Jie's gaze swept over the rearview mirror, and she saw that the eyes behind the lenses were fiery and cold, so piercing that she almost narrowed her eyes. Since the other party had directly pointed it out, it would be too impolite to try to go around it. Yes, I remember. At that time, you were expanding your business and needed a large sum of money, and I happened to have a client who was looking for a project with a higher return on investment. Then, I did my job and became the intermediary between the two of you. After a while, you got to know each other. The young woman in the back seat laughed. How broad-minded. Oh. In my memory, I contacted that investor very quickly and started a deeper cooperation. I tossed you to the side and saved quite a bit of intermediary fees. But what made people sigh with emotion was that you easily acquiesced, and everyone maintained a cooperative relationship. Nothing went wrong. Sanjay lifted the short hair on her forehead, and her smile deepened. Madam, have you always harbored a guilty conscience? I only remember that when the order withdrew from Xia City in a panic, I took the initiative to contact you. Of course, I knew very well that you wouldn't be of any help at that time. I just wanted to use you to try and convince that investor to continue to invest. But you disconnected at that time. Oh, I'm sorry. I had too much fun that night. In the following period of time, my cooperation with you was completely severed. This was completely in sync with that investor's attitude. Madam, my business is limited to Xia City. But why is it that when the 2000s of a miss incident occurred? More accurately speaking, when the Hill of Bones where Jean Tong was buried appeared in the outer seas of Xia City, our relationship suddenly became closer? Sanjay could only sigh. Business is business. Madam, why do you have to be so calculative? The sports car shuttled back and forth on the high-speed maglev roads of the mountainous region, but the car suddenly sank into a state of silence. The young woman's soul sender in the back seat seemed to have lost her soul once more. She didn't respond. Sanjay couldn't help but have a thought. If she were to jump out of the car right now, what were the chances of her escaping this life-threatening trouble? This silence lasted for 5 seconds, or maybe even 10. Only then did Madame Halder's will manifest once more through the voice of the young woman in the back seat. Every time I hear the words business is business, I feel a chill in my heart. But when it comes from your own mouth, it feels completely different. The tone was gloomy and cold. It was vastly different from the overbearing feeling from before. This caused Sanjay to react a bit slower. Before she could figure out how to divert this dangerous topic, she was pierced by the flaming gaze of the car's rearview mirror. This soul sender was definitely crippled. An indescribable thought popped up in Sanjay's mind. Then she heard the other party's voice again. You don't have to explain or hide it anymore. In the short term, my judgment of your identity will not change. I came to find you tonight and spoke to you. There was no element of probing in it. I just wanted to inform you, and vent. Madam. I hope you can convey my attitude and the corresponding judgment to that person. I'm talking about the judgment of her current investment project. In the car, only the low voice of the soul sender reverberated. You didn't give me the complete information. Instead, you acted like a foolish and greedy businessman. You dug out a gold mine but haven't fully explored its reserves yet. You couldn't wait to package it up and sell it off. You even married one woman to another. Do you feel that this gold mine is more effective and that you won't be able to sell it for a good price if you sell it later? Or do you not think highly of the gold mine's reserves, so you don't hesitate to ruin your reputation in order to make money first? Or do you want to deliberately muddy the waters and obtain even greater benefits from a level unknown to others? Out of respect for that investor, I choose the third option. Sanjay also fell silent. She no longer tried to correct Madame Halder's train of thought. The information you gave me seems to be a half-finished product. In reality, although the value of the complete information is high, it is very difficult to sell it for a suitable reason. The half-finished information doesn't have this kind of sensitivity. Instead, it is easier to conceal your intentions. Some people will mistakenly believe that gold has been dug out from the sand, but they will ignore the direction behind it. After all, Luo Nan is quite simple. His personality, strong points, and weak points can be discovered as long as one puts in a bit of thought. And it is because he is simple that there are only a limited number of places that can be used. If one side exerts force, the results will be obvious. If two sides exert force, there will be variables. And if more than 3 sides exert force together, it will become complete chaos. Under the interference of many sides, the designs, and schemes of each side will not be able to achieve the desired results. The struggle surrounding Luo Nan will only become more complicated. Madame Halder took the initiative to stop and catch her breath upon speaking to this point. She even extinguished the invisible Yin fire on the back of Sun Jiayi's neck. Her attitude seemed to be easing up. Her originally straight back leaned back, making her look more like a passenger hitching a ride. She even asked for some opinions. Aren't there too many elements of conjecture? Sun Jiayi thought for a moment and said, there has to be a source of inspiration. A bit of stimulation or something. Yeah. There are two sources. The first is Yin Lu. She said that the uncertainties need to be reduced to a minimum. I have a very bad feeling about this. The second one. Do you know that Luo Nan and Tian Bang ran into each other on the streets tonight? I haven't received any tip-offs yet. But Madame said that they ran into each other by chance. I think that it really was a coincidence. Perhaps. But with Tian Bang's intelligence, how could he not know that communicating with Luo Nan in a hurry would only irritate him? He wouldn't achieve any results. And with his personality, he would probably rather bump into He Yuan's cold rebuke than engage in a meaningless entanglement with Luo Nan. So I believe that even if this encounter was a coincidence, he must have made some preparations in his mind. Perhaps he has grasped the principles and techniques of communicating with Luo Nan. Or perhaps he is still a bit lacking and wants to do some verification. He must have a share of your information. Now we can make the final inference. I once believed that you were making a fuss about Luo Nan. You used him as bait to draw away the attention of others, making it convenient for you to act. But then I thought of something she once told me. Investors act sneakily for the sake of controlling costs. But in the end, they always need an enthusiastic response. After a brief pause, the young woman in the back seat spat out a clear word from her lips. The blood flame order has been forcefully stopped before they can obtain an enthusiastic response. But you guys are already reaping the rewards from Luo Nan, right? If this is the case, I can roughly guess the position of that investor. The sports car had already driven onto the Ring Highway by now. The northern boundary of Xia City was higher in altitude. Looking through the front windshield of the car, most of the city district of Xia City was converged into a sea of lights. It was truly beautiful. And the mountainous region the car drove through became a scene of thick ink. It was connected to the faraway corners of the stars. The sports car pierced through the barrier of the air, whistling through the air with a humming sound. It was as if it had crossed the boundary between the wilderness and civilization in an instant. It was as if it had traveled from one dimension to another. Nothing seemed to have changed, but in reality, the endlessly expanding air pressure within the sports car was like an incorporeal bomb. It could explode at any moment. Sun Jiayi's voice came from the front driver's seat at a certain point before the explosion. It was just that it carried a peculiar tone. I've always been amazed by your gambling decisiveness. At the same time, I have reservations about your self-destructing inner core. This kind of heart isn't a good place to be. In the back seat, the soul sender suddenly raised his head. The eyes reflected in the rearview mirror were truly burning. Chapter 633. It was not even 7 o'clock in the morning. The winter solstice had just passed, and the early morning of Xia City did not provide enough light. The faint light from the sky could not penetrate the lake, so the bottom of the lake was still dark from the public activity area. Only when the enormous devil ray swam past the protective glass did the water become somewhat lively. Xie Junping did his morning exercise all the way to school. He bought some snacks on the way and arrived at North Shore Gear. He arrived relatively early. There was no one here except for Shui Lei, who woke up earlier than him, and Cat Eyes, who was yawning. Cat Eyes had it the hardest out of everyone. It was her turn to be on duty last night. Faced with a beauty, Xie Junping had to find something to say. Where's Teacher Luo? He. Xie Junping immediately understood. He's in seclusion again. Cat Eyes curled her lips. Nth time he pulled an all-nighter. Shui Lei defended her. Sister Cat Eyes, didn't you say that he just received some important information last night? What information? Xia Junping was very curious. Cat Eyes yawned again. It seems to be a collection of theses written by his mother when she was alive. Senior Sister Qingwen's theses can be found in the school library and journal websites. It seems to be an unfinished work. It hasn't been officially published. It's the present he received from the meeting with Professor Pan last night. No wonder. Xia Junping understood and expressed an optimistic attitude. A few theses. They're unfinished. They won't take long. They're just mementos. Cat Eyes extended 4 fingers, 4 petabytes. Those documents are 4 petabytes in size. Xia Junping was smashed silly. 4 petabytes? With such a size, even the most realistic virtual reality documents would have hundreds to thousands of hours of playback time. Let alone ordinary words and pictures. Cat Eyes chuckled. He really sank in. When he comes out, this semester will be over. Xia Junping immediately cried out. Don't. The real-time check-in system is getting more and more perverted. 3 to 5 days is fine, but if he really is in seclusion for a long time, even if I bring out the headmaster, it won't work. Cat Eyes gave Xia Junping a rare pat on the shoulder. Might as well suspend him from school. Humph, I thought he was a little sober, but it turns out he's still in a daze. What a waste of breath. The beauty's intimate attitude made Xia Junping's brain heat up, and he couldn't control his mouth. That means you still haven't given me enough. In the next second, Xia Junping fell to the ground along with the chair. He was confused. This was the only drawback after becoming half an insider. Cat Eyes and the others knew that he was no longer a little newbie who would die with a single poke. They did not hold back when they attacked. It was a pity that he had not truly awakened yet. What would they do if something bad happened to him? Xia Junping was about to protest loudly when Jerry, who had just successfully stolen some snacks, happily stepped over his chest and used his face as a stepping stone to jump forward. F***CK, unfilial son. Xia Junping spat twice and casually scooped up a leg instead of Jerry, who had maxed out his agility. Hey, Nanster. Ignoring Xia Junping's sorry state, Jerry was quite excited. He tugged at the person's trousers and climbed up. In the blink of an eye, he scurried up to the person's chest. The person took advantage of the situation and pulled the muskrat into his embrace. Beautifully done. When Xia Junping heard these words, he simply wanted to use some strength to knock Luo Nan down. However, Luo Nan had already awakened. He relied on his fleshly body cultivation to take root beneath his feet. He was not someone a little newbie plus 1 level ability user could shake. Helpless, Xia Junping slapped the floor and grumbled as he struggled to get up. Cat Eyes was a bit baffled. You're in a pretty good mood? Luo Nan sat in front of the bar and revealed a smile to everyone. His smile was more persuasive than any words. Cat Eyes became even more baffled. Not even 8 hours had passed. He had just slept. No, this bro didn't sleep at all last night. How could a person's mood undergo such an earth-shattering change? Cat Eyes blinked and asked subconsciously, have you finished looking through all the information? Luo Nan picked up a snack and stuffed it into his mouth. He answered vaguely, how is that possible? There are so many. It would be hard to go through them in 2 or 3 years. Take your time. I'll look through them bit by bit. Don't overlook anything. Cat Eyes reached out to probe his forehead, but Luo Nan slapped her hand down in a bad mood. The group looked at each other in dismay. They had no idea where Luo Nan's appearance of great enlightenment came from. Actually, if the 2 first oblatums of the Blood Flame Order, who had been busy all night, were invited over, they would be able to obtain the correct answer very quickly. They might even be able to make further deductions. However, no one here was omniscient and omnipotent. Everyone could only console themselves. In any case, this was a good thing. Afterwards, the group gathered around the bar to eat breakfast. Or perhaps it could be said to be the dessert before the meal. The food that Xia Junping had casually bought was just enough to fill the gaps between the teeth of these ability users. The true breakfast was brought over by Qi Nikuan, who was responsible for taking over the shift. Compared to normal people, it was at least 10 servings. There was even a meticulously brewed medicinal porridge inside. It had extraordinary effects and was expensive. It was hard to buy it on the market. All of this had to be shared with the entire team. Only Luo Nan, a dog who got rich from teaching, could afford it. At least half of the reason why Xia Junping woke up early was because of this medicinal porridge. Not only did Qi Nikuan bring the breakfast porridge, he also brought the latest news. Yesterday, the Xia City military sent a letter. They wish to cooperate with the branch to develop new business. It should be related to the purification of the mental plane. Cat Eyes laughed in spite of herself. When did the military start managing propaganda? Are they trying to meddle with ideology? Are they trying to rebel? It's not a rebellion. I'm saying that it has nothing to do with ideology. Qi Nikuan was careless and let Cat Eyes fly away. He laughed bitterly and was about to explain when Luo Nan suddenly spoke up beside him. It's the scavenger. Yes, that's it. The cleansing and purification of illegal orders and black witchcraft in the Abyss region. It's to lower the rate of the so-called murder in the inner world. Qi Nikuan came to a realization after speaking. You know about it? Vice President, he mentioned it? No, Shangtian Bang said it last night. I bumped into him on the road. Luo Nan responded and didn't say anything else. Shuelei, who had been eating with his head down, interrupted. He must have seen the use of the Blood Intent Ring's fortress. Last night, Brother Papercut and the others played with firecrackers the entire night. They had a lot of fun. Midnight even left a message in the group. She wants Nanster to develop some sail, thruster module, and a cannon and giant ship. Luo Nan grunted. I saw it too. I can give it a try later. The configuration is easy to talk about, but to turn it into a product, it will most likely take the form of a paper talisman. Chapter 634. Cat Eyes and Qi Nikuan knew very well that Luo Nan had recently been struggling with the configuration domain. Luo Nan's main direction of study was basic research, not applied development. Therefore, the research and development of the Blood Intent Ring and its surrounding products were no longer on Luo Nan's mind. He had to wait for Gao Meng and Papercut to come knocking on his door before he could discuss it. But in the end, this was still a matter of a single thought. If teacher Luo Nan was in a good mood, it wasn't a big deal for him to say a few more words. Cat Eyes just seized the opportunity to ridicule him. Qi Nikuan, Luo Nan, and the others all automatically skipped over her. Luo Nan was in a pretty good mood this morning. Next, he continued to explain the current situation of the Ring of Blood Will Fortress. The talisman cheat can only be a temporary product. If the fortress platform only needs 3 to 5 functions, it can still be of some use. Once the demand for functions increases, just thinking about how to distribute them will be troublesome. Cat Eyes made a tch sound. It will definitely be troublesome on the society's side. But if it's on Tianbang's side, then it won't be a problem. Qi Nikuan nodded in agreement. It's the military, after all. Their organization is very strong. They definitely have the confidence. Xia Junping was amused by their conversation. He swallowed the hot porridge with great difficulty and chuckled. Every time we go on a mission, we have to distribute weapons, equip ourselves, and then we have to hang talismans on them. Could it be that this is the legendary divine possession, the descent of heavenly soldiers? Perhaps the old methods of talismans are similar in nature. Shuelei was not superstitious, but he was keen on finding modern explanations for traditional projects. This was obviously due to his dojo background. Cat Eyes took the opportunity to combine similar items. This is Mr. Gao Daming's favorite topic. Old Yu has also researched this topic and has even published a thesis. In just a few sentences, the topic had wandered off. This was a normal conversation. Everyone gathered around the bar and chatted aimlessly until the other students arrived one after another. They entered and left, and the private space was completely occupied. At this moment, Roiwen also arrived. The little girl had to eat breakfast at home to appease the elders. She left home a bit late today. There was less than 20 minutes before class started when she arrived at school. Even so, she still made a special trip to meet Luonan. Shuelei looked at his watch. Let's go. If we go now, we'll be able to catch the train. Oh, Nanster, we'll be together for the third period in the morning. Do you need me to sign for you? Luonan laughed. I won't make things difficult for Director Xie. I'll go by myself. The group of people looked at each other. TSK, there is indeed a problem. As a senior student who was about to graduate, Xie Juanping's schedule was much freer than that of middle school and high school students. He could sit paralyzed in his seat and press his stomach to digest the effects of the medicinal porridge, but his brain and mouth could not stay idle. He watched as Luonan and Shuelei entered the elevator. He smacked his lips, feeling rather baffled. This bro was just about to hire someone to hack the sign-in system. How come our teacher Luo was cured without even making a sound? Don't wimpy brats come and go for a while? Cat Eyes chuckled twice. She then greeted Chinikuan and went home to catch up on her sleep. Chinikuan stopped her with a wry smile. Wait, we went too far off topic just now. I almost forgot that Mr. Luo has a vote for the street sweeper. Now, he has a vote in any matter of the branch. Cat Eyes yawned. She was a bit impatient. You can just tell him directly. What does it have to do with me? But if Mr. Luo votes in favor and agrees to cooperate with the military, then it will be impossible. According to the relevant business requirements, he will be very busy for a period of time in the future. The corresponding security plans will need to be changed. Vice President, he hopes to communicate with us first. Cat Eyes raised an eyebrow. Are you sure that a certain person will agree? Yes, it really is possible based on the situation just now. But there's no need to look for me. I'm just being pulled in. I don't have much autonomy. You guys can discuss it and just notify me. Cat Eyes ignored Chinikuan's bafflement and walked straight out of gear on the north bank. The cold morning wind blew the fresh air of the jungle in the plaza in front of her. It was quite pleasant. She ignored the sneaky or bold gazes of a group of teenagers and stretched her body to her heart's content. The sunlight permeated through the gaps between the branches and leaves, gently touching her cheeks. It slightly raised the temperature of her skin and made a corner of her heart inexplicably warm. Oh, it couldn't be considered inexplicable. Cat Eyes could roughly sense that this was due to certain elements that hadn't been frozen for a long time within Luonan's tightly sealed system. It felt pretty good, but why? Cat Eyes' doubts also existed in Shuelei's mind. During the third morning class, Shuelei and Luonan sat together. The two of them didn't pay attention to what the teacher said on the podium. It must be said that Shuelei was an honest child. Normally, no matter how arduous his cultivation tasks were, he would listen to the class and complete the homework. He would earnestly complete all of them. And the reason why such a situation occurred today was because of Luonan's abnormal performance. He stared in a daze. Luonan's head hadn't been raised since the beginning of class. He opened up the split-page notebook that he always carried with him and placed it on the desk. He flipped it to the flexible e-ink screen page. The screen glowed with a lustrous radiance, forming a work area. A three-dimensional dynamic image file was being projected into the work area. The geometric structure displayed was very simple, and the projection effect was pretty good. It seemed to be rolling around in the palm of Luonan's hand, but he couldn't quite understand the markings on it. Luonan played this image file over and over again in the entire class, perhaps even the previous two classes. He played it over and over again without the slightest bit of boredom. Perhaps it was a configuration. Shuelei didn't really understand, so he could only make a blind guess. But the problem was, even if it was a configuration, what the hell was this state? From the side, the corner of Luo Nan's mouth was curled up. Sometimes, he even unconsciously cracked open, letting out a chuckle. He was in a completely selfless state. Let alone Shuelei, even the students sitting to the side looked over from time to time. They were defeated by the ceaselessly rotating geometric structure time and time again. In the end, they gave up on understanding and used their gazes to classify Luo Nan as an abnormal person. In the beginning, Shuelei was cursing Luo Nan's mortal eyes. He couldn't recognize gods, Buddhas, immortals, and saints. But later, he saw Luo Nan chuckle more and more often. Sometimes, even his shoulders would shake. In the end, Shuelei was a bit flustered. Nanster. Ah, what? Luo Nan shifted his attention in a very normal manner. His face was blank. Shuelei hiccuped a few times, but he still asked directly, "This diagram of yours is a configuration, right? What's so interesting about it?" "This. It's just a fragment. It doesn't have the meaning of a configuration." Luo Nan explained, but he lowered his head and laughed a few times as he spoke. Then Shuelei's ears trembled slightly. A message came from the psychic wave network. It was a recording that Luo Nan had shared with him. A woman's voice entered his ears. It was bright and clear, "Admit it. You're a negative number dregs in terms of configuration thinking. The more formulas you introduce, the more it proves that your thinking is chaotic." What followed was a man's rebuttal. It was unhurried and not slow, and it even carried a bit of an old-fashioned flavor. "Right now, what we need is a complete model. It's mathematical thinking and not hand-drawn. Qingwen, don't squander your talent. A certain someone's talent for mimicry is max. It just so happens that it's long range. Why don't you ask the teacher to give an evaluation?" He. Luo Nan propped his forehead with one hand to the side, burying his head in laughter. Shuelei didn't find the humor in this conversation, but the name mentioned made him flabbergasted. This is. Chapter 635. December 30th was a Sunday, the first day of the New Year's Day holiday. The flow of people on the streets soared again. The residents of the surrounding satellite cities also entered the main city area to spend their holidays. The exhaust exhaled by 200 million people raised the temperature of Xia City by 2 degrees, making the body feel more comfortable. Around the Shangding building and the surrounding high-rise buildings, the traffic on the guiding light track shuttled back and forth without beginning or end. Most of them were private cars, but there were also 100-jointed cars that had just been dismantled and landed on various platforms by the traction force. Zhang Yingying got out of a 100-jointed car and walked quickly into the Shangding building. When she climbed the stairs, she stepped on the last bit of red of the setting sun, adding a glazed luster to her white pencil pants and nude high heels, which attracted a lot of attention. But she didn't care about that. She raised her hand to look at her watch and sped up again. In the sound of her heels hitting the ground, she passed through the corridors of the interior floors of the building. After a lot of twists and turns, she finally arrived at the place. Conference room 1135, done. After making sure that she arrived before the appointed time, Zhang Yingying breathed a sigh of relief, adjusted her breathing, and pushed the door open. Huh. The circular conference room that could accommodate about 20 people was unexpectedly empty. There were only 3 or 4 people. Except for a staff member in charge of service, the rest were the same group. Not at the conference table, 2 bodyguards were sitting against the wall. At this time, they turned their heads and greeted her with a smile. Yingying, you're here for a meeting? Big brother, Captain Gao. Zhang Yingying responded with the way she was used to, and then curled her lips. His Majesty said he wouldn't come, but he only gave me half an hour to replace him. I climbed up from the bottom of the sea. While they were chatting, Zhang Yingying's eyes glanced at the young man at the conference table who was obviously a top perception master, but had no reaction to the changes in the outside world. Zhang Yingying gritted her teeth. This guy. The 2 bodyguards laughed, but they had no intention of intervening. After the lecture on the 14th, in addition to the two concepts of cage and configuration that shook the world, the several bets that came before and after also painted the whole situation with a strange gossipy color. Many people in the inner world knew that the young genius, teacher Luo, had a beautiful female guard beside him who was extremely eloquent. She had insulted the senior B-class expert, REE, until she lost her composure and lost all face. As for Xia City, Zhang Yingying's favorable impression of Luo Nan was pretty much an open secret. It was just that Luo Nan, the main character and the core of this matter, didn't seem to have this awareness at all. This young man, who had just turned 16, seemed to always live in a dimension that was difficult for outsiders to understand. Sometimes he was depressed, and sometimes he was in high spirits. He did not seek external help and had his own logic. Luo Nan was earnestly looking at his flexible e-ink screen. He used his finger to open a folder. This was his mother's research data, which he had transferred from Professor Pan's cloud space. The theme of the information was modern architectural design, but for 99% of the world's designers, it was tantamount to a book that they could never understand. In the folder that he had just opened, there were about 7 or 8 different kinds of documents, from the most primitive observation data to intuitive three-dimensional models, including the corresponding analysis and calculation. There were also some ideas that were written down on the spot, recordings of discussions, and even videos left behind. These documents together formed a basic unit. It didn't revolve around design theories or cases, but rather a genuine basic configuration. It was just a fragment that had lost the meaning of the configuration. There were about 3,000 to 4,000 similar units. Together, they formed the accumulation of basic research data on the configuration. This was a gift from the heavens that Luo Nan didn't even dare to dream of. Mom must be watching me from the heavens. Luo Nan couldn't help but fantasize about these things. For the first time, he willingly crawled under the mighty power of fate, loudly praising it. He had once thought that since his mother was able to build a passageway that led to the clouds, she would certainly carry out explorations and research in that bizarre world. Thoughts were thoughts, but he never would have thought that the results of his mother's research were like a light boat crossing a specific path in the long river of time. They formed a predestined intersection with him, who had similarly chosen this path and was doing his best to row forward. The inheritance of fate was the highest reward for his 5 years of life and death struggle. Of course, Luo Nan wouldn't forget. He was very grateful to Professor Pan Wen, who had created, or at least accelerated, this intersection. There was also Tian Tian, Tian Tian, and Tian Tian, as well as all the people within this river of fate who had given him a boost. Hey, didn't you say that you were in a good mood? Why are you becoming more and more aloof? Zhang Yingying finally couldn't hold back. She slapped Luo Nan on the shoulder, announcing her existence. Luo Nan, who was wandering in the river of fate, was slapped onto the shore by Zhang Yingying's slap. He finally turned his head, but the side of his face met with an open lapel of a light-colored short-sleeved suit. He instinctively leaned back and saw a white-collared beauty with quite the intellectual and capable air. Zhang Yingying had one hand on the conference table. Her body leaned forward, and she was very close. She cast a very direct gaze on Luo Nan's face. From Luo Nan's perspective, Zhang Yingying's clothes were more meaningful. This sort of outfit stirred up even more of his memories and emotions. Luo Nan still remembered that just 3 months ago, this was the same person who had disguised herself as a lawyer and boarded the ship that blocked the mountain. She continued to participate and push, making him willingly enter the water. She walked step by step into the deep water, all the way until he entered the river channel that belonged solely to him. She obtained the highest reward. So Luo Nan was very grateful to her. It could be said that he didn't forget his old kindness. Luo Nan couldn't help but laugh. I was just thinking about you. Zhang Yingying was a bit stupefied, but when she saw Luo Nan's expression, she knew that she was thinking too much. Even so, she was still in a bit of a difficult situation for a short period of time. She didn't want to retreat and show weakness. She just subconsciously reached out to touch the flexible screen and opened a document in the folder. It was originally a meaningless action, but the complicated mathematical equations stung her eyes with a couple of glances. Do you understand these? Yeah, not really. Luo Nan was very honest. The information passed down by his mother was very detailed, but the level was also very high. Luo Nan still didn't understand some of the special algorithms involved. He probably needed to search for information or even learn the relevant knowledge on the spot. He would need to grind it down bit by bit. In these 2 days, Luo Nan specially selected recordings and videos to experience them one by one. He only skimmed through the rest of the information. He didn't read it in depth. Even so, he felt dizzy every time he looked at a few sets. It was hard for his mind to continue. Luo Nan laughed when he thought of this. What are you so happy about if you don't understand? Why can't I be happy if I don't understand? Fine. Luo Nan knew this. If it was the past, he would have been grinded to the point of insanity long ago. Just thoroughly understanding his mother's research data required a large amount of time. Uncovering the deeper mysteries of the cloud world was even more distant. Then killing Gong Qi was placed behind these two in order. Wouldn't it be even more meaningless? Luo Nan should be anxious, but right now his mood was strangely tranquil and joyful. Every folder contained detailed and clear information. It recorded the process of his mother's research back in the day. Looking at the daily logs and records, as well as the recordings and videos that appeared from time to time, was like learning and conversing with his mother. So Luo Nan knew. His mother's writing was clear, definite, and concise. But when she scribbled and discussed, it was inevitable that she would hesitate and struggle. Sometimes she would even have a bit of a temper. When she encountered obstacles, she would promptly communicate with others in addition to researching on her own. Most of the time, it was in the form of brainstorming, letting many people participate. Among them were Professor Pan Wen, his grandfather, but most of them were that fellow. They discussed and even argued. They casually drew diagrams or more complex data formulas and so on. Luo Nan could understand some of them, but he couldn't understand some of them at all. But it didn't matter. He just quietly watched from the side. Every time this happened, his mood would be anxious and relaxed. He was like a glutton facing a delicacy. He wanted to swallow it clean in one gulp, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to eat it all. He could only taste it bit by bit. This feeling was strange, but it wasn't bad at all. Luo Nan chuckled. His laughter made Zhang Yingying's hair stand on end. And at this time, the door to the conference room was pushed open. A group of people came in one after another. Their gazes naturally focused on Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying. Some of them even revealed secretive smiles. TCH. Zhang Yingying didn't want to be gossip material. She also didn't feel the need to deliberately keep her distance. She immediately pulled out a chair and sat next to Luo Nan. The conference room was quickly filled with people. The last to enter was He Yueyin. She was still dressed conservatively as an office lady. As the outsider for today's conference, Tian Bang entered a second before He Yueyin. He wore a military uniform that was rarely seen. The Major General's gold star on his shoulder made him look extremely sharp. But when he opened his mouth, he still had that relaxed and leisurely appearance. Oh. The protagonist has already arrived. His gaze fell directly on Luo Nan without the slightest bit of concealment. He Yueyin didn't exchange pleasantries. She didn't speak nonsense. She just nodded slightly at Luo Nan after sitting down. She said, "Next we'll have a meeting. We'll discuss the specific matters related to the scavenger project." During yesterday's video conference, the branch team had already reached a consensus. They basically agreed to cooperate with Xia City's government, the garrison force, and the East Sea Military Theater. We'll push forward with the research and development of this project. We invited Major General Tian to this meeting today to ask him to introduce the background of the project in detail. We'll discuss the functional requirements of the project, the technical bottleneck, the research and development plan, and other issues. We'll strive to form a framework and implement it as soon as possible. Her gaze fell on Tian Bang after she finished speaking. Tian Bang understood. He grinned and took over the conversation. Today I've come here to discuss the scavenger project. Of course it's the first priority. But before that, we can't avoid the convention. We still need to pay our respects. Chapter 636. Right now, the people seated in the conference room included a B-rank power like Gao Meng, the vice president, 2 veteran deputy secretaries, and several members of the technical team. Basically, half of the technical elites of the Xia City branch were here. They all heard Tian Bang's absolute explanation, but no one expressed any dissatisfaction. What was there to doubt? The government and the military had clearly come for Luo Nan's Blood Will Ring fortress. This was the cornerstone of the cooperation between the two sides. Without this, any other terms would be meaningless. Needless to say, the 1,000-person lecture on the 14th of this month had already established Luo Nan's authoritative position in the mental side. The Blood Will Ring fortress was anchored in the depths of the Abyss region. Over 90% of the people in the conference room would go there from time to time to experience and research. Right now, there were quite a few people staring at Luo Nan with burning gazes. They wanted to find an opportunity to toss out all the doubts they had accumulated over the past few days, seeking a thorough understanding. Luo Nan did not know about these things, nor did he care. According to common sense, after Tian Bang's flattery, Luo Nan should have said a few polite words to complete the formalities. This was the custom of mutual business flattery. But Luo Nan did not react until Tian Bang finished speaking. He just sat steadily in the middle of the conference room and raised his head, indicating that he was listening to him. That was all. Fortunately, no one raised too high a demand for Luo Nan's conduct, especially Tian Bang himself. He had already experienced Luo Nan's apathy and dullness 2 nights ago, so he just laughed it off. Then he signaled to the staff to turn on the projection equipment and show the finished presentation to the participants. Of course, General Tian was a bit arrogant. He would not waste his breath explaining. The following introductions fell on the shoulders of his accompanying aide. Next, let me introduce the background of the project. The one who stood up to act as the speaker was Lieutenant Colonel Zhu Ling. This young soldier was also an old acquaintance of Luo Nan's. They had even eaten a meal together a few days ago because of the Thunder Falcon dojo. Zhu Ling was different from his own sloppy superior. He always had a serious and upright expression. His figure was ramrod straight like a soldier, and he naturally brought the atmosphere of the conference on the right track. Luo Nan was a bit distracted at this time. The situation before him made him think of the mutant infection incident that he and Peony had dealt with together. There was a time when he had attached his soul to ink and participated in this kind of briefing. It seemed to be much more interesting than this. Another important reason was that the background information provided by the military was nothing new. Although Luo Nan wasn't present at the voting site yesterday, he was able to get a basic understanding of the situation through Tian Bang's prior communication. There weren't too many changes. Zhang Yingying, who was beside him, was a temporary helper who had been brought in when she was in seclusion. She didn't know much about the project, so she listened attentively at first. However, Zhang Yingying was in the most well-informed hidden indigo firm. Her accumulation of information was far from something a newbie like Luo Nan could compare with. She easily drew inferences about other cases from one case and understood the cause and effect. She lost interest and moved closer to Luo Nan to chat in a low voice. In the end, she was still able to keep up with today's main topic. The government and the military have finally found an opportunity. Oh. Luo Nan didn't refuse to whisper to his friend. He also wanted to hear Zhang Yingying's opinion. They have always disliked certain B-class experts and even transcendents from the inner world. I'm talking about the mental side. Especially people like Snake Tongue, who dabble in curses and witchcraft. Of course, there are also those illegal orders. They play with all kinds of blood sacrifices and black masses. Every year, several thousand lives are involved in the inner world murders. They want to control them, but they can't. They can't get any benefits either. Of course, they hate them to the bone. Zhang Yingying's explanation was very close to Tian Bang's, excluding a few subjective descriptions. She chuckled as she spoke, on the side of the government and the military, old Gao and the others. Oh, and you as well. They are all criminals engaged in illegal construction. It's just that right now they're thinking of enlistment. Illegal construction. I don't think it counts. The Abyss region is more appropriate to call it a land outside of the law or a wilderness of the vast sea. Yes, Mr. Pioneer Luo Nan. In the ability system of the society, the code name of a B-class expert was architect. Some people say it was engineer, but the former was more appropriate. Of course, the fleshly body could be used as well. It wouldn't be wrong to say that the structure of the body and soul was constructed. However, the earliest source of this name was the so-called Abyss Region Architect. It referred to the mental side building their own house in the Abyss region. Everyone had an intuitive understanding of the vile environment of the Abyss region after the appearance of the fortress. It was absolutely not an easy task to complete the construction of structures there. Even a veteran B-class expert like Gao Meng could only plant simple structures such as the spirit glyph for a short period of time. They couldn't withstand the wind and rain for long periods of time. Even more amazing characters were able to retain some seeds and frames, and then construct more complex structures on top of them. Only transcendents were able to construct semi-permanent structures, forming all sorts of inconceivable effects. Reaching this step, one could already be called a god, according to the words of the various orders. Reaching this step, the so-called religious altar residents could already borrow the berserk and inexhaustible power of the Abyss region. Its level and intensity far exceeded the limits of humans, forming a virtuous cycle. But how many transcendents were there in the world? Constructing structures in the Abyss region was so difficult. It was inevitable that some people would come up with crooked ideas. They would forcefully seize a person's essence energy, stimulate a mortal's heart, extract soul strength through black witchcraft, evil sacrifices, and so on. These were the most common methods. There were also darksider life forms like the human-faced arachnid. There were also some mutants that possessed special abilities. They were born to stir up trouble in the Abyss region. Due to the special nature of this level, the effects were enormous. Some of them were even vile. This caused the already dangerous and complex Abyss region to become even more foul. Looking at it from this angle, the work of scavengers was indeed necessary. The guide Zhu Ling just so happened to transform the relevant statistical data into an intuitive pie chart. He talked about how many types of illegal constructions were in the Abyss region. He talked about how much direct damage was caused. He talked about how much trouble would radiate to the traditional 3 belts on the mental plane, and so on. Of course, he also talked about the benefits that would be brought to everyone's cultivation and lives after the governance was perfected. In short, he acted as if he had ample reasons and was worthy of trust. Gao Meng, who sat across from Luo Nan, let out a yawn. He was also one of the people who voted last night. He really wasn't interested in these official articles. He squinted his eyes to see Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying chatting happily. Then he thought about how he didn't stop Luo Nan last night. He felt a bit unbalanced in his mind. He knocked on the table. Chapter 637. Gao Meng's words were crude, but his reasoning was not crude. The background and significance of the project could be explained to the heavens, but in the end, it all came down to practicality. The scavenger project had to be guided by technology. No matter how perfect the other ideas were, they were meaningless if they were impractical in terms of technology. Zhu Ling didn't mind his own explanation being interrupted. Instead, he took advantage of the situation to cut into the specific technical link. According to the collected data and user feedback, the functionality of the fortress is quite simple and crude. It's like a fixed fort. It only has 2 basic attributes, defense and attack. If it wants to truly display its usefulness, this fort must possess mobility, probing, and other functions. Therefore, we hope that the project team can combine the blood wool bracelet product and develop a few basic elements of a paper talisman plug-in in a short amount of time. Then we can coordinate and perfect it. Luo Nan raised his head. So it's just a temporary product, right? Huh? No. This is a long-term project. The government and the military's idea is to use the fortress as a large functional platform. We believe that it possesses this kind of potential. But there's a problem with your train of thought. Luo Nan raised his head. His gaze swept across Gao Meng, Zhu Ling, and even Tian Bang and He Yuan's faces. He shook his head and said, the direct cause of the crude functionality of the fortress is the crude functionality of the blood wool bracelet. The design of the paper talisman plug-in is cumbersome. After all, they are only transitional products. They are temporary crutches that can't be borrowed. If we were to talk about the root cause, it would still be the lack of the participants' configuration thinking and skills. In other words, it's a fundamental problem. Luo Nan mercilessly criticized the product his own company had launched. He conveniently swept everyone in. He spoke bluntly under the subtle expressions of the group of people. If a hardware plug-in is needed to realize a function, then this system platform is trash. The fortress can have hardware, but it can't be this kind of hardware. The fortress itself isn't that bad. It's just the current application model that's bad. Zhang Yingying giggled to the side. Luo Nan was baffled. What's wrong? Nothing. Honest boy, fight. Zhang Yingying clenched her fists and waved her arms, encouraging him. Quite a few people blinked from the sourness that assaulted their faces. Although he was the instigator of the situation, Gao Meng revealed the true face of the most enthusiastic fortress fan. He immediately got into the zone and asked anxiously, what's the best way to use it? Luo Nan thought for a bit and said, in an ideal state. What I mean is, under the impetus of complete configuration thinking and skill, the fortress should be like a giant ship roaming the universe. There should be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of crew members inside. Together, they formed a group consciousness, but there was a clear division of labor. Everyone cooperated and performed their own duties. Their posts, functions, configurations, and operations were all unified. The crew of a bastion ship are the architects and operators of the ship. They use their thinking and technology to create the necessary configurations. These configurations must conform to the logic of the bastion platform, as well as the characteristics of the ship's own soul. Not only could it realize the effective integration of collective strength, but it could also increase the adaptability of the platform as much as possible and raise the upper limit of the platform. If necessary, the fortress platform on the mental plane needs to be unified with the equipment platform on the material plane. It's like the Deep Blue Walker's formatting domain. That should be a variant of the abyssal region configuration. It can be effectively combined with the mechanical combat platform and the operator, truly forming a mutual interference between the mental and the material. It is a combat platform that straddles the two domains. Luo Nanyang spoke eloquently. In the beginning, there were people in the meeting room who were whispering to each other and exchanging glances. But later on, everyone shut their mouths and stared at him. Aside from Luo Nan's speech, there was not the slightest noise in the meeting room. Only when Luo Nan's voice fell did Gao Meng loudly applaud. This train of thought is beautiful. It sounds like everything is right in front of your eyes. You've been thinking like this for a long time. It really was right in front of their eyes. This was because what Luo Nan had described truly existed in the alien civilization related to the external neuron. In the initial interface of the virtual brain system, there were two satellites orbiting around the virtual brain. One of them was an exoskeleton armor, which represented the development system of an individual. The other was a spacecraft in outer space, which represented the application of collective power. Luo Nan had more or less straightened out the logic within through this period of analysis and study. His train of thought naturally became clearer and more intuitive. It's truly marvelous. It even makes people believe that Mr. Luo has seen a scene that truly exists. This is the foresight of wisdom. Tian Bang lightly clapped his hands from the far end of the long table. His words sounded similar to Gao Meng's at first glance, but there was a bit of a different flavor in the transition of the syllables. He Yuan gave him an ice-cold glance because of this. Tian Bang was thick-skinned. He didn't even blink. But then he changed the topic to another aspect. We are more at ease now that we understand Mr. Luo's train of thought. Letting Mr. Luo become the chief technical officer of the scavenger project is truly the most appropriate choice. Zhang Yingying asked curiously, Chief Technical Officer? Yes. According to the usual practice of civil-military cooperation projects, the military is willing to provide a certain amount of remuneration and technical shares to employ Mr. Luo as the chief technical officer of the project. If Mr. Luo is willing, we can also provide an official title and engage in a longer and more intimate cooperation. Oh. Luo Nan responded casually. Tian Bang had said similar words yesterday during the remote vote. Now he repeated it again. It was like taking off one's pants to fart. It was an unnecessary move. Though the Blood Intent Ring Fortress was not Luo Nan's original invention, he was probably the only person on Earth right now who truly understood the marvels within, excluding a certain person whose whereabouts were unknown. There was no need to talk about this in Xia City. Unless President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu relied on their seniority to interfere, no one could occupy this position. Since he had agreed, he had to do things. Luo Nan had a basic train of thought. He was operating on the flexible e-ink screen when he felt the gazes of all the participants. The natural noise had all disappeared. Zhang Yingying's elbow, resting on the table, came over. You want to enter the system? Only now did Luo Nan discover that everyone's focus was different. He was only thinking about the first half, but everyone else was thinking about the second half. Oh, that's what I mean. Luo Nan's uncle, Mo Haihang, was a high-level employee of the SCA. Luo Nan had some concept of the situation of the public sector. Tian Bang was talking about titles and not positions. This meant that if Luo Nan nodded, he could enter the military and government public sector and become a public employee. He could enjoy the most stable social benefits, but of course, he would be restrained by the entire public sector. He was not interested in this at all. Let's talk about titles and whatnot later. It's too troublesome. I don't want people to manage me. The breathing noises in the conference room returned to normal after hearing Luo Nan say this. The group of people all laughed. It had to be said that Luo Nan's current way of thinking was quite in line with his age. They were all laughing, but there were subtle differences between members of the military, members of the society, and even different people. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to these things. It was just as he said before. The fortress was still far from complete. He needed to expend a considerable amount of energy to supplement and amend it. Defense, attack, movement, and detection. There were 4 basic elements in total. Not only did he need to perfect them one by one, he needed to form a complete system. Even if he could find mature and complete examples in the user manual and the virtual brain system, the original design would not be suitable due to the difference in the user's basic abilities. It wasn't something that could be done in a day or two, or even a month or two. Luo Nan operated on the flexible e-ink screen. The first thing he opened was the calendar and the corresponding work schedule. Zhang Yingying moved closer to take a look. She saw that the schedule was at least half a year later. She couldn't help clicking her tongue twice. Luo Nan ignored her this time. He considered how he should insert the research and improvement work of the Blood Intent Ring Fortress into the process of learning the external neuron configuration theory, researching his mother's thesis, and collecting and analyzing the cloud configuration fragments. Well, from this angle, the transformation of the fortress, the construction of the Blood Soul Temple thousands of kilometers away, and even the specific actions of killing Gong Qi in the cloud world were all considered exercises in the process of learning and research. And when he considered the difficulty, the transformation of the fortress seemed to be relatively simple. It was just right for a beginner like him. Luo Nan's last bit of apprehension was dispelled after he incorporated the mission into his own logical system. He immediately began to modify the schedule. He pondered about it for a while and said, I need to equip a team. Tian Bang, He Yueyin, and the others were discussing the specific issues of cooperation right now. However, the information that Luo Nan inserted was still the first priority. Tian Bang responded in the first instance, of course. Luo Nan wasn't going to be polite with him. Professionals can supplement depending on the needs. This includes but is not limited to mental side charms, perception, realization, mathematical modeling, mechanical design and manufacturing, material science. Oh, this includes laboratory production lines. Tian Bang chuckled, you're the CTO. Research and development revolves around you. As long as the circuits don't go out of line, the demand doesn't exceed, and the output is uninterrupted, you can have whatever you want. Zhang Yingying curled her lips. Nonsense. Luo Nan was quite content with this before he was certain of a problem. He didn't say anything else. And at this time, someone from the society raised a question. It was directed at Tian Bang. I have a question. If the reconstruction of the fortress is completed, its performance will be as expected. Then is there a clear direction for the goal? Is it to be pulled into the wilderness to fight against the mutants and dark-side races? Or is there some other plan? I feel that the government and the military don't have a clear arrangement in this regard. The person who spoke could be considered an acquaintance of Luo Nan's. It was another B-rank mental side psychic, Mr. Bai. His daughter was the mysterious and treacherous Bai Xinyan, who was hard to distinguish between friend and foe. Tian Bang maintained his smile in response to Mr. Bai's inquiry. Even though I have confidence in Mr. Luo's talent and strength, it isn't a safe choice to go face to face with a monster like the human-faced arachnid when you've just set foot in this brand new domain. I am willing to suggest that we first apply this epic-making platform to Xia City's own defense and public security. First, we'll eliminate a few small problems and troubles. We'll continue to accumulate experience and plan for the future. Mr. Bai continued to question, what are small problems and troubles? As long as the abyssal region is involved, it seems that there is no room for small fish and shrimps to interfere. I don't know if we can catch small fish and shrimps in the abyssal region. However, there are some people whose ambitions and desires have climbed too high before their abilities are sufficient. There are many such people. Xia City is no exception. Tian Bang gave Zhu Ling a meaningful glance. Zhu Ling understood and switched to the screen of the presentation. Soon, a circular interface that was pieced together from hundreds and thousands of garbled symbols appeared. This is an invitation to some absurd event. Tomorrow night is New Year's Eve. It should be about time. Is there anyone here who has received the latest information? A buzzing vibration sounded just as Luo Nan's voice fell. Though it was small and weak, it could not hide from the eyes and ears of the group of ability users in the conference room. Luo Nan was carrying out the initial details of the plan when he felt his wrist vibrate. His gaze shifted and he saw the virtual screen of his wristband appear. The garbled dial on it was extremely eye-catching. It was no different from what was displayed on the screen of the presentation. Chapter 638. Crown, abandon the perfect position, like this, quickly turn back time. Deliberately bumping into each other will attract others to look around. The wine will help me lie. Crown, ugliness will eventually disappear, so, you decide the direction, deliberately colliding, pretending to be destined to be destroyed, and the mournful cries of samsara will no longer echo. Hoo hoo, no more echoes. Amidst the toxic melody, the lights, the sound, the screams, and of course, the most important thing was still the handsome and charming singing and dancing. This caused the small square stage that was temporarily set up to enter a serial explosion mode. Crown, oh, shui yuan. This way, doll. You decide the direction, Barbie dominates me Oh my god, is this still that 18th tier girl group? Luo Nan stood behind a layer of barriers on the stage. He was no longer in the best position, but he was able to fully experience the explosive atmosphere of the scene. Who would have thought that the BHD girl group, which had always been pure and cute, would have such a strong reaction after playing a little sex appeal? Crown, crown, Shuiyuan, Shuiyuan. My queen of the snow garden. Bamboo Pole, this newly promoted B-class ability user of unknown age, waved his arms with all his might. Like the young men and women below, he gasped in admiration, and even screamed, completely ignoring the sidelong glances of his peers and non-peers. Papercut covered his face. He couldn't bear to watch. But when they looked further, Octopus, who was a medical worker, was also twisting his hips to show off his extraordinary sense of rhythm. It was as if he was on drugs. Since he was already in such a state, the joint investigation tonight had to be temporarily suspended. Sure enough, it's just as Brother Hai Jing said. It's more suitable for small venues. Luo Nan simply propped his elbow against the railing. He enjoyed this visual feast with a clear conscience. He never imagined that a naive person like Bai Yu would wear a suit, wear sharp eyeliner and maintain a cold expression while dancing. He almost didn't dare to admit it. There was an indescribable sexiness to it. Oh, speaking of which, I seem to have exposed something. Luo Nan subconsciously turned his face away. His line of sight cut through the entire region below. The BHD troupe's small stage performance was part of Xia City's New Year's Eve celebration. Yep, a small part. To be precise, their performance was part of the small stage of the Flowing Water Group in Xia City's New Year's Eve event. While the song, Crown, was being played, at least a dozen similar performances were being performed in various areas of Cloud City Water Village. If there was a citizen in the Sky Square right above the large living area, he would be able to see the live broadcast of more than 10 small stage performances on the big screen in the square. But these were just for the sake of making up for the gaps in the square's singing competition. However, all of these paled in comparison to the main venue in the municipal square. At least, that was the case in previous years. This year's New Year's Eve event at Cloud City Water Village was destined to be very different from the previous years. At the same time, he pulled out dozens of acting scenes and divided them into dozens of stages of various sizes. This proved that the director had either lost his mind or was going to go all out. Only with a huge investment of manpower, money, and energy can we achieve such a grand scene. Those guys are having a great time. Zhang Yingying adopted a pose that was more or less the same as Luo Nan's. She was supporting herself by his side. It was quite a coincidence that Zhang Yingying was dressed in a black suit with fine white stripes and shorts. She was dressed in the same style as the BHD troupe on the stage. She didn't have a lower body, revealing her snow-white long legs. If she were to jump onto the stage, the group of otaku men and women might mistake her for someone else, but they would most likely prostrate themselves before her slender and beautiful legs. Luo Nan just said, "Yep," when Zhang Yingying leaned close to his ear. "I heard that you have something going on with them." "Huh." It just so happened that the sound waves surged. Yep, that must be it." Luo Nan's face was blank. He expressed that he didn't hear what you said clearly. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. Luckily, Octopus, who was having a great time twisting his body around, shouted from across the crowd, "What's this girl troupe called again?" "BHD." Luo Nan responded loudly. He was very happy to get a few more fans for his friend. But his voice was forcefully pushed down by Bamboo Pole, who was having the most fun. "Snow Garden is the tallest." "Beauty leg." Octopus agreed loudly, "Beauty leg." "Holy crap." Luo Nan wanted to correct him, but when he saw the crisscrossing long legs under the light, he was dazed. He missed the first moment. Bamboo Pole had already crossed his body and shouted at him, "Boss, if you have a signed photo, release it immediately. I want a hard photo. Snow Garden has a high-class face. It's a pity not to take a hard photo." "Hard my ass." Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He was just about to seriously correct the attitude of this group of rotten people when a greasy voice spoke out from behind him, "If you want a photo, just take it on the spot. Now is not the time." Go back and have some peace and quiet. Take a good pose. Take a photo however you want. Luo Nan furrowed his brows and turned his head around. There were about 6 or 7 people behind him. They had just stopped not long ago. The leader was a middle-aged man in his 50s or 60s. He was a bit plump, and his clothes could be considered decent. But from his eyes to his teeth, he revealed the various colors of society. Right now, his eyes were fixed on Zhang Yingying's back. She was leaning against the railing, making people very suspicious. He was about to reach out with his hand in the next moment. And then he would be dead for sure. Perhaps it was Luo Nan's gaze that alerted him. The middle-aged man finally turned his eyes and met Luo Nan's gaze. Clearly, he didn't expect Luo Nan to be this young. His gaze was also this cold. His expression was a bit stiff. But when he glanced at Luo Nan again, he saw the flickering Mojibake dial on Luo Nan's wrist. He relaxed and laughed. Little bro, are you coming along? What was that be again? It's a high-quality girl group. It's possible to get one, but it's a bit difficult to get all of them. Everyone can work together for a bit. Before he could finish speaking, his companion next to him went, "Oh no. Brother Zhou, this group isn't on the list." The middle-aged man, Brother Zhou, chuckled. "It's just a trick the organizers use to lure people. Since they're here, what's there to worry about? There's a manual marking function on the system. Just spend a few more points." As he spoke, he raised his wrist and aimed at the BHD group on the stage. Just as he was about to operate, Luo Nan happened to turn around and take a step to the side, blocking the miniature lens. Brother Zhou went, "Huh? Make way, little bro." Luo Nan completely ignored him. No matter what, Brother Zhou was still a person with a reputation. He couldn't eat a loss in front of his friend. His expression turned quite ugly. "Little bro. Let me tell you this. In this situation, eating alone is the most childish behavior." Clap clap clap. Luo Nan still didn't turn his head. He just clapped his hands. "Okay, stop looking. Let's talk business." "What?" You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.